Okay, we're recording and I'll press start webinar mark and I'll let you know when we've reached the attendee number.
Okay, so let's go for it. Okay, good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to APDAWG Pandemic Puppy Buying, What Have We Learnt? My name is Mark the Vet. I'm the Secretariat, very proud Secretariat of APDAWG. If you follow me on Twitter, don't worry, there will be a Starling murmuration posted later. I did nip out and catch it. And there were two peregrine falcons actually attacking the murmurations tonight, so drama. I am thrilled tonight to welcome you to join us on this Tuesday evening. Thank you for sharing it with us. It's a really exciting evening tonight and very, very relevant subject. Couldn't be more relevant. Incredible the amount of doggy related stories in the news at the moment, the pet theft stuff, ear cropping, illegal breeding. I don't know if you saw BBC Morning Live this morning. There was about 15 minutes about puppies and pandemic puppies. You got the Sunday Times last weekend. The magazine was, I think, 5 pages on pet theft. Big shout out to Animal Protection Services for doing the amazing work they're doing. So I don't think there's ever been as much doggy stuff in the press, to be honest with you, and in the mainstream press too. So all this is relevant. We've got 500 people joining us tonight. So hello, everybody. I won't say hello personally because it will take ages. Tonight's meeting is being recorded, so don't worry about taking notes. You can watch it back and we'll post it hopefully in the next couple of days. Big thanks to ALAW, UK Centre for Animal Law, and Tiffany, especially for organising tonight the back end stuff, and Paula, and also our dogs who are kind of our media partners, especially Adam. Tonight, we're going to have 2 speakers doing sort of satellite, unrelated topics, really, to the main topic. And then we've got 5 guest speakers who will do slightly longer presentations. You can ask questions. Please always be polite. Please be respectful. There's so many issues to talk about tonight, so I won't take up too much of your time because that's what the speakers are here to do. If you do have to log off at some point, again, you can catch up, but please put in your diary February the 23rd for the next meeting, which will be on brachycephalics, called Welfare Problems of Flat-Faced Dogs, Can We Ever Solve Them? So that proves to be yet another fascinating evening. Obviously, keep subscribing to the newsletter if you haven't done already. Follow us on Twitter, APDAWG1. And for tonight's meeting, if you are using social media, especially Twitter, please use the hashtag #PandemicPups, because then we can share everything and maybe have some conversations that spin off from the event. So amazing speakers tonight. I'm going to pass you to Lisa Cameron, who is the chair of APDAWG, and she's going to introduce each speaker personally. But I just want to say, I know most of the speakers, I've campaigned alongside them for years, literally years, you know, Vicky and Mike and Linda, incredible people. All the other speakers I know about or have met once or twice, but phenomenal knowledge tonight. And please enjoy it and please learn some stuff. And hopefully after the back of it, we'll make some progress and learn more about what we can do in terms of protecting dog welfare. So I'll hand over to Lisa, who will introduce the first speaker. Cheers, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you to absolutely everybody who's joining us this evening. I think on the back of Lucy's Law, we've done it again, and another amazing achievement in Parliament. I'm sure that 500 attendees for an all-party parliamentary group must be a record, and I'll certainly be looking into that. Before we start, I've got Rossi, my dog and mascot for dog, next to me, so you might see his ears popping up from time to time. And I just wanted to thank the person who didn't give their name but sent me a little Rossi mask for lockdown, which I'm delighted with. And thank you so much. If you're out there, please let me know who you are, because I wanted to thank you, but there wasn't anything on the envelope at the time. So tonight we have another remarkable line of speakers. The first 2 speakers will do 5-minute presentations, and then we'll move on to the panelists, who will have 10-minute presentations each. So the first speaker is Dr. Belinda Johnson, our special friends. After graduating from Cambridge University as a vet, Belinda also studied person-centred counselling skills and volunteering for crews in human bereavement and the Samaritans, developed a passionate interest in bereavement training and the need for multidisciplinary community support for both people and animals experiencing vulnerability. She founded and runs the UK charity Our Special Friends, which provides animal companionship and support services. So welcome, Dr. Johnson, and over to you for your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Tiffany's the honours for me.
All good. I'm just going to press start, okay?
Yep, thank you.
Bear with me 1 second.
That's all right. I've asked Tiffany to do it for me because rural Suffolk internet can sometimes be a little bit sporadic, and I didn't try on it. I can do it from this end if you prefer. The joys of Zooms and technology.
I've tried this just before the meeting, but of course this always happens. Just 1 second.
It's okay. While we're doing that, I'll just say that, yes, back to the sort of structure of tonight, we've got two shorter topics, slightly sort of satellite topics really, and then we've got 5 main speakers who represent sort of across the pet sector. So once again, thanks everyone for attending, and pay attention. Belinda's about to start.
For our special friends, we champion the power of animal companionship and support services for people in need within the local community. We're a regional charity developing best practice, wanting national influence as what we're doing can be replicated. Owners experiencing vulnerability have a massive impact on animals in their care. For many people, their dog is the only other heartbeat in the home, and pets are completely reliant on human health and well-being. In this pandemic, it has been blatantly obvious that animal companions are never more needed. However, you can be the most responsible, experienced dog owner, but when you are physically, mentally, emotionally, or financially unable to provide the care and support that your dog needs, often through no fault of your own, you need support from others. People can really struggle in silence, hidden from view and off everyone's radar, for a whole spectrum of reasons. Support is needed, and it is only possible if you seek help or someone else is able to see that you need it and act on it. We need to make every contact count. Animals that are so important to their owners are often overlooked, invisible to others, voiceless, and yet 24/7 they are providing vital life-enhancing, often life-saving support. They are family carers with 4 legs rather than 2, and their role is reducing the burden on other overstretched resources. We are finding a huge gap between the clinical expertise in human health and veterinary care, where a thorough initial assessment can result in lasting transformative change, empowering people and tapping into community and individual resilience. We're a new jigsaw piece in community care and have found a lot of unsupported invisible vulnerability, which can be helped by a range of services. We have evidence and knowledge from over 1,300 cases about the challenges that people face and the support that they need. And we currently have about 80 volunteers. By working collaboratively, welfare needs of both owner and pet can be met, which is very powerful. We are in the centre, bridging the divide between human and animal support, and people approach us directly or are referred to us by agencies. This collaborative approach means we can help other organisations to access hard-to-reach people as we get very close to people and initiate conversations. unmet needs are identified, resulting in signposting and referrals back to already existing resources. We often find there are no family or friends, or they're frazzled. We are accessing at-risk people of any age through their love of animals and are able to empower and engage them. And these are the range of services that we have found are needed. It's difficult to know which of our many cases to show you. Here you can see two special animal friends when we first met them after they were referred by the community health team. You can see Keela hidden behind Ruby. Both had overgrown nails and the huskies were digging into her pads. Ruby had a growth that was easily removed. Their owner hasn't been out of the house for years. Now the dogs are getting out into the fresh air on regular countryside walks and are taken to an enclosed field for off-lead exercise, and their owner is engaging with us and support agencies. There are many more Ruby and Keelas who are hiding with their owners, imprisoned by their owner's vulnerability. There are proven benefits of community outreach, and there are major issues of not having animal companionship support services. So what do we need apart from sustainable funding? We need social care and mental health support workers to enable pets in the household to have care plans. We need pet-friendly policies, especially in temporary and emergency housing. And we need to finish our community outreach model and fully evaluate what we've learned so that we can share our knowledge and influence. Our learning can be replicated, and we need to reduce this preventable invisible suffering. We are passionate about the need to support these special relationships as we're seeing significant animal welfare issues. And we want a world where the power of animal companionship is recognized and integrated into effective care and support plans for people and animals to safeguard their welfare. Thank you for listening to our innovative, but to us, very obvious approach.
And if I could just very add, if there's anyone that feels that they could help us, love to hear from you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Belinda. And I think that really resonates, especially with the level of shielding and social isolation going on at the moment with COVID. And I wanted to also add on that note that if anyone has been affected by the pandemic, obviously our thoughts are with you from all of us at APDAWG in these very, very strange times. Lisa, I'll allow you to, it sounds mental. Lisa, please, would you introduce the next speaker?
Thank you so much, Mark. And yeah, and with the last presentation, I thought it was really important about temporary accommodation as well. And I did raise that with the Housing Minister, who's looking at now, because we know the great work of Dogs on the Streets as well, and very, very important that temporary accommodation allows pets, particularly in the main it's dogs, and that's a meeting that we have to attend in the near future, virtually, I imagine, in circumstances that are ongoing, but it will be important that we take those issues forward. So great to link with you today on the work that's being done and have that highlighted again. So our next presentation is Helen Howell, who is a canine behaviour consultant and expert witness. Canine behaviour consultant and expert witness in cases of dogs who are subject to legal cases assessing breed type and the behaviour of the dogs. She's a former police detective herself and currently completing a PhD at the University of Lincoln, where the subject of her research is the development of a structured professional judgment tool for the assessment of human-directed aggression in dogs. So over to the next presentation from Helen Howell. Thank you. Thought I saw it there. Yes. Good.
Sorry, just bear with me. I have too many presentations open for you all. Just 1 second. Okay. There we go. Excellent.
Okay. I can't actually see it on my screen.
You can't see the presentation, Helen?
No.
No?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I can see that the start of the presentation, so I wonder if it's the screen that's on, Helen.
Okay.
I wonder if
I've got it now.
it's the wrong. Right.
Okay. Right, okay, I've got it. Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you my proposal for a scheme that's intended to protect the welfare of dogs seized in legal proceedings. Next slide, please. Approximately 3,600 dogs are seized in the UK every year. I've dealt with dogs that have been kennelled for over 3 years. The situation's been exacerbated by the coronavirus crisis, with court proceedings taking much longer due to a backlog in the criminal justice system. Unfortunately, dog cases aren't deemed to be of priority. At present, there's no system in place to check on the welfare of seized dogs. Next slide, please. The kennels used to house seized dogs are commercial boarding kennels that have contracts with the police. While some of these establishments are better than others, many aren't designed to house dogs on a long-term basis. Staff at commercial boarding kennels may not have the sufficient knowledge and the experience required to deal with dogs that may be displaying fearful or aggressive behaviour, and may be unable to identify or misinterpret signs of fear, anxiety and stress in the animals concerned. As a result, they may feel that they can't remove the dog from its kennel safely. In some cases, dogs remain in their kennel for many months with no exercise or social contact. These animals often don't receive routine vaccinations and veterinary checkups, and even for those that do, the examination's carried out visually from outside the kennel door. Next slide, please. All 3 of these dogs were confined to kennels for months, 2 of them for over 6 months, with no exercise or social interaction, having been deemed too dangerous to be removed from the kennel. All 3 were removed from their kennel with no sign of aggression by myself or Dr. Kendall Shepherd for assessment. They were all affectionate dogs who actively sought to interact with us. Diesel was seized purely because of his appearance. He'd never behaved aggressively prior to his seizure by police and placement in kennels. One of these dogs remains in kennels and has been there for over 3.5 years. Next slide, please. The physical welfare of seized dogs is also a great concern. This dog was in kennels for 3 months and returned to the owner very underweight with a skin condition and sores on her joints. Next slide, please. In cases like those that I've just used as examples, where dogs aren't removed from their kennel for daily exercise and social contact, the animal's basic welfare needs aren't being met. They're not able to exhibit normal behaviour patterns and aren't being protected from suffering. This is clearly a breach of the Animal Welfare Act 2006 and is of great concern. The RSPCA have published guidelines for those involved with the care of seized dogs, and these are designed to ensure that the welfare needs of these dogs are met, and cases like those I've just shared with you don't happen. However, at present, there's no system in place to ensure these guidelines are adhered to. Next slide, please. The welfare of detained persons whilst in custody is checked and reported on by trained volunteers. Independent custody visiting schemes consist of local volunteers who make unannounced visits to police custody and check on the rights, entitlements, well-being and dignity of detainees held in police custody. Currently, There's no such system in place to ensure the equivalent rights, entitlements and well-being of animals in the custody of the police, and consequently, their welfare remains entirely unchecked. I propose that a similar scheme be implemented facilitating unannounced visits by trained and vetted volunteers to police contracted kennels to check on the welfare of seized dogs. Access to kennel records and veterinary records by such visitors, in addition to observation of the animals concerned, would enable any welfare concerns to be identified and reported on in order that the appropriate intervention may be applied. Ideally, this would prevent behavioural and physical deterioration of the dogs and breaches of animal welfare legislation. There's already a similar scheme in place for checking on the welfare of working police dogs housed in police kennels, the Animal Welfare Lay Visiting Scheme. This is well established and used by many, if not all, forces. It could prove a useful framework for the proposed scheme. Next slide, please. It's suggested that this would be overseen by a multidisciplinary committee acting in a similar way to the Independent Custody Visitors Association. The committee would include representatives from the police, DEFRA, the RSPCA, the veterinary profession and the animal behaviour profession. I've contacted the agencies concerned with the treatment of seized dogs, but as yet I've had no reply from the police or DEFRA regarding my suggestion. Dr. Kendall Shepherd, who has raised awareness regarding the welfare concerns of seized dogs for many years, has kindly assisted me with this project, and we're working together with Dr. Sam Gaines from the RSPCA to move the proposal forward. Next slide, please. I appreciate this is a very short presentation, but hopefully I'll get the opportunity to speak more about the topic in the future. And if you have any questions regarding the proposal, you can contact me by email at this address. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Helen, and great presentation. And again, you know, use APDAWG, everyone, as a platform to connect. You know, obviously we're normally in Portcullis House and then we go to the pub afterwards, but everyone's got their email address in view. So please feel free to contact and share stuff and all work together to make progress, a bit like the last meeting we had about sort of collaboration. Before we go to the main topics, I was wondering if anyone would like to hear from our lovely patron, Mr. Peter Egan, who is joining us tonight. Peter, are you there?
I am, yes, I'm here, yeah.
Would you like to say a few words?
Well, yes, I mean, two fantastic presentations. Thank you both very much. I'd just like to say really how delighted and proud I am to be a patron for APDAWG. It's become such a very important forum for all of us who care about our companion animals, and has visited so many important things that that happened to our pets and our friends. And I think I'd like to congratulate you, Mark, and Lisa Cameron, because you've put this together and it's become a very, very important forum. And to have 500 people clocking in tonight to see what's happening is, I think, a huge achievement. And I'm very proud to be here.
Oh, thank you very much, Peter. Much appreciated. So we're going to move on. We've got 5 speakers and that will be followed by hopefully about 55 minutes of discussion time. So hopefully we can send questions in and the panelists can get involved. Once again, please be polite, please be respectful. The next speakers are phenomenal, all of them, in doing what they do. We're incredibly proud. I must single out Pets for Homes for coming on tonight, because obviously they're playing a huge part in the pandemic puppy situation, as are everyone else. And just really interesting to hear what they're doing, and I know from behind the scenes, but the amazing improvements they're making to protect dog welfare. The issues of lockdown, we all know. There's the prices of puppies, the social distancing impact, imports, abandonment that we're seeing now, the demand, reselling online, rescue centres, and this need to keep the levels of dogs up, the population up, and is that really appropriate? So I'll pass over again to Lisa to introduce the next speaker, but really from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all the speakers, the ones we've had, but also the ones we're about to listen to, for attending tonight and sharing all their wisdom. So over to you, Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, Peter, as well. We're so delighted to have you join our meetings and to be our patron. It means so much to so many people who are in attendance. The thing is, at the discussion at the end, perhaps we can have a look as well. I noticed down the chat a lot of people quite upset about seeing the condition of the dogs in the kennels. We can perhaps have a chat about how to raise it in Parliament, whether it's via an adjournment debate or something going forward, so that, you know, we do a lot of presentations at APDAWG, but we also take a lot of action as well. And I think that that's one of the key you know, qualities of the group, and we'll certainly be looking at ways to take forward the issues that were raised tonight. So our next excellent speaker is Dr. Rowena Parker, lecturer in companion animal behaviour and welfare science, as well as a Biotechnobiological Science Research Council Future Leader Research Fellow, wow, at the Royal Veterinary College. She leads a research team exploring broad issues within the field of canine welfare, including impact of disease on behaviour, welfare and cognition. 60 papers on canine health and welfare since 2012, and as well as being awarded UFAW's Young Animal Welfare Science 2016. Welcome so much this evening, Dr. Rowena Parker. Thank you. And we have the presentation as well. Fabulous.
So huge thank you for having us here today. This is a project that hopefully some of you will have heard of in the last few months that we as a team at RVC are really excited about, getting some evidence behind the phenomenon that we're going to be discussing tonight. So some of this might be a little bit of teaching some of you to suck eggs, but hopefully some of this will be either a reassurance or a concern in terms of putting some numbers to what we've been seeing. Okay, to the next slide, Tiffany. So as we know, nearly 10 months now since our very first lockdown in the UK, with some pretty dramatic lifestyle changes seen for various members of society, including periods of furlough, self-isolation, home working and homeschooling. I don't think there's a household that hasn't been touched in some respect. One of the key features of this has been this move towards more people being at home for longer lengths of time. Soon after the first period of lockdown back last March, there was pretty quickly media reports that people seemed to be looking for puppies in unusually high numbers. I'm sure you're all familiar with some of the press that's come out around this. The Kennel Club putting out some figures last spring showing pretty phenomenal rises just in people inquiring about puppies and people searching various animal sale sites looking for puppies of any kind. As we've already said at the very start of this meeting, there's been a phenomenal co-occurring media presence around this issue. People seem to be both fascinated by dogs during lockdown, but also concerned about what's going on in this area. Okay, to go to the next slide, please, Tiffany. So as was mentioned, I'm an animal welfare scientist, and as soon as anything starts going on with there being a demand for more puppies, I'm sure like many of you, my ears pricked up, and not in a particularly good way. And there was some pretty big welfare concern picked up from the very start. So just to split this into three areas, I'm sure there's many more that will be discussed tonight. One of the key areas was the potential for impulsive buying of puppies from households who potentially either before lockdown or after the pandemic may not be the best homes for dogs in the long run. So they may be suited in some ways to being a puppy home, but not being a home for a healthy, happy dog for potentially 12 plus years. The flip side of that, of course, is the supply side. So at least media reports that unscrupulous breeders were starting to cash in on this soaring demand, that we were seeing more of the undesirable activities that worry us all around puppy farming and illegal importing of puppies to try and fill this demand. And finally, once puppies are actually in the home, starting to worry about, we're all having strange enough lives as it is right now, but what about puppies who this is the world that they've been born into? So starting to be concerned about lack of socialization and habituation, opportunities to teach them about the world that they will then enter, hopefully in the not too distant future. Okay, to move to the next slide, please, Tiffany. So back last spring, summer, I was really interested to see lots of my colleagues in various establishments across the UK and internationally were starting up some really fabulous research projects looking at canine welfare in the context of COVID, so particularly focusing on the welfare of dogs that are in the home right now. I'm sure most of our dogs have had pretty big changes to their lifestyle, but I was increasingly starting to itch thinking, what's going on with puppies? Surely somebody's going to do something about puppies. And then bit the bullet when our fabulous funders, the Animal Welfare Foundation, had put out a call for desk-based research. We're very lucky to be one of the 5 COVID-related projects funded in this area. So my key interest with this project was to try and work out what had been going on and why, fundamentally. So who was buying puppies during the pandemic and why were they buying them during this time? Now, obviously, from a scientific perspective, this could just be a bit of a kooky year anyway. So we wanted to know, have some kind of comparison. So was this just normal puppy buying, but on a much bigger scale, or were there some other aberrations that we didn't know about? So the general study aims here were to describe the behaviour and motivations of puppy buyers, both in the pre-purchase process, which we know if it goes wrong can be pretty catastrophic potentially for the rest of that dog's life and the relationship with that dog, during the actual purchase, and then the post-purchase window, which again, we were looking at this in dogs or puppies particularly that had been bought during the pandemic. So this is going from March through till the very end of last year, but then comparing this to puppies that were bought in the same period in 2019. We took some quantitative approaches. There's going to be quite a lot of stats in a moment. I apologise for the numbers already, but I've tried to make it as friendly as possible. And also some qualitative analysis. So this was looking more at free text, which we won't talk about today for the sake of time, but we've got loads of data to come out of this project over the next couple of months. Next slide, please, Tiffany. So in terms of the study design, this was a massive online cross-sectional survey. So we wanted to capture as many puppy owners that had been buying puppies both last year and the year before. It feels very strange saying 2020 was last year. We went about this with a snowball sampling design. So it's very apt given that we got had a lot of snow in the last couple of days. But you can imagine that we started this with small routes, and thanks to sharing from many of the people who are in this room tonight, either as panel members or organisers or participants, we had a huge sharing effort here to try and get this across the UK. We were generally just interested in adults who'd bought a puppy, so we had some questions around why weren't we looking at rescues. This is because we were specifically looking at the purchasing process here. Next slide, please, Tiffany. In terms of survey design and structure, again, for the sake of time, I won't go into this too heavily, but just to give you a flavour of what we were looking for, as I mentioned, it was in 3 distinct areas: the pre-purchase, the purchase, and post-purchase environment. So things about the dog themselves, particularly post-purchase, but during pre and the purchase periods, what was the owner doing? How did they get that dog? And it's pretty amazing the amount of variables that you can look at in that. This was a survey that was particularly long, so we did give people a get out clause where they could, about 3/4 of the way through, ditch, and we'd still get plenty of good data. But actually, as Claire, our study technician who's here for the discussion tonight, can attest to, we actually got incredible commitment of people all the way through the study, so we've got tons of data. Next slide, please, Tiffany. We also wanted to know specifically a little bit more about the pandemic puppies, as you might have guessed, and we wanted to know a little bit more about their owners. So specifically, what was it about the pandemic that might have influenced their decision to want a puppy amongst all of the madness that was going on in the world at that time? But also thinking forward to the future around, did those owners have the crystal ball for the future? Had they already thought about some of the potential challenges from purchasing a dog at this time, whether that be immediate problems or problems in the long term? Next slide, please, Tiffany. So as I mentioned, we had a phenomenal response. We definitely weren't expecting this much data, which has been, again, thank you to Claire, a huge effort to clean, but we had over 7,500 responses over those 2 years, which for quite a prescriptive sample of people that we wanted, we were very surprised at that. We've just got to the stage, this is extremely hot off the press data, in that we've just literally finished cleaning it. So we've had to obviously remove some specific owners who hadn't read some instructions, but we've ended up with over 6,600 puppies to analyse data for. So I'm just going to go through some of our very preliminary findings. And when I say very preliminary, I mean we've literally just been clicking the buttons in our statistics program to get this to you. So next slide, please, Tiffany. So firstly, we always are interested in people and their pre-purchase behaviour around doing research, around do they know what they're letting themselves in for. So first result here, we're quite interested to see that there was a very small amount of people in both years, and it's actually an identical percentage, who said that they hadn't done any research. And these obviously are people that we're concerned about. But the vast majority said that they had. And actually we saw, so we've got, if it ever says P and it's in green, that means that there's been a significant increase in something. If it's a P in red, it means there's been a significant decrease. So here we actually saw there'd been a significant increase in the amount of people who had done some kind of research into owning a dog or owning a specific breed. But if we look at the third category here, we can actually see there's been a significant dip in those owners who consider themselves to be experienced. So what we might be seeing here, as has been speculated by many of us and in the newspapers, is that we're seeing new owners, so people who've never bought a dog or owned a dog before, who are coming to the puppy buying process for the first time. So we might be artificially inflating the amount of people who are going about doing research because they are extremely new blank slate dog buyers. Next slide, please, Tiffany. In terms of the research that they'd carried out, we were interested in what sources they'd been accessing. We know that the internet's full of advice on dogs, some of it great, some of it awful, and many shades of grey in between. And we can see here that, as I said, the things that are in green means that they've significantly increased. So the biggest increase we can see here is that people have been more reliant on their friends and family who've owned dogs before for advice during the pandemic compared to 2019. There's been some other positives, so things like increases in people accessing charity websites. I'm sure there's some who are here tonight who've been very useful. Of concern, we noticed that significant decrease, only slight but still significant, in the amount of people accessing that advice from veterinary professionals. And again, this list is sorted by how popular they were in 2020, and we can see actually that some of these sources are very low down the list, and perhaps some of the sources we'd be more worried about are higher up the list. So a mixed picture in terms of where people are getting their information from. Next slide, please, Tiffany. In terms of the main reasons, so this was without asking specifically about the pandemic, but the main reasons why those households wanted to acquire a dog. Interesting again, that identical statistics, so 64.2% of owners in both years, the main reason they wanted a dog was companionship. And we all know this, I'm sure many of us have a dog for that very reason. But in terms of what had increased during 2020, it really did seem to reflect what we've been seeing in the media around why people want a dog during the pandemic. So increases in people buying them because they want to improve their family's mental health, a big push towards people wanting dogs to encourage them to walk and exercise, and we know how vital it has been to get outside in the last year, and also companionship for children. So again, as we mentioned at the start, homeschooling being a big thing that many people have probably not anticipated when they first signed up to having kids. We can see this kind of fits with the media narrative around why people wanted dogs in 2020. Where's the next slide, please, Tiffany? In terms of how they went about actually acquiring their puppy, now, so we can start getting pretty worried, and this is where we've been speculating on for a little while now. So we know that because of things like social distancing, we haven't been going into each other's houses as regularly as we would have been in the past, or in fact at all. We saw a huge decrease in the amount of people who had acquired their puppy from inside their breeder's home. And clearly this is where we would like them to go, so we can see the environment that they've hopefully been raised in, and we can see relatives. We'll talk in a moment about where's mum, but we've had over 30% drop off in people who've actually got inside their breeder's home. And we can see corresponding to that, an over 25% increase in picking up puppies from outside the breeder's property. So this is often from their doorstep or their garden. So again, this concern here being that we've got the potential for a loophole where breeders or people who aren't breeding in the way that we'd want can cover up that environment quite effectively. In terms of other areas, we have had some increases, again in small percentages, of the type of behaviour that we would really have as a no-no. So picking up puppies from service stations or car parks, again, a small but significant increase. Or we're seeing this phenomenon of breeders delivering puppies to the person's property, so the breeder's property never being visited at all. Next slide, please, Tiffany. One of the crucial areas we know, of course, is to see a puppy with their mother, ideally feeding. But we can see here that although we were at a reasonably good level, still not perfect, of course, in 2019, over 85% of new owners seeing their puppy with their mum, we had had a significant drop of over 10%. So now we're seeing that at least a quarter of puppies are never seen with their mother, which again is probably ringing lots of alarm bells in people's ears. Next slide, please, Tiffany. In terms of the influence of the pandemic, we had nearly 4,000 of our responses came from puppy owners who'd bought their puppy during the pandemic. And we wanted to ask some questions quite explicitly here in terms of how the pandemic had influenced their purchase. So to start with, we wanted to know, had they thought about getting a puppy before the pandemic? Was it just, there's lots of people I bumped into who now think that I'm the fun police and will say, I've been planning to buy a puppy for years and it just happened to fall at this point in time. And again, the majority of owners, so over 88%, had considered to have a puppy at some point in the past, but still again a worry here that over 1 in 10 owners had never considered buying a puppy before last year. In terms of asking whether the pandemic had explicitly influenced their process, again, we were quite surprised here that over 40% said yes. We often find with surveys that we worry about this whole concept of social desirability, where people answer and they give you the answer they think you want. But again, people being quite obvious here that actually 2 in 5 owners said that the pandemic had some kind of influence. Go to the next slide, please, Tiffany. So on the next slide, when we actually asked specifically, what was it about the pandemic that influenced your decision? The by far and away winning answer here was that they had more time to care for their dog, which is a real challenge when we think it's great that people have more time for their dog, but of these answers, this is probably the one that's most liable to change going forward. We know that none of us can predict how the rest of 2021 is going to pan out in many aspects of our lives. So actually, of all of these answers, although some seem really undesirable, so people saying that I was bored, so wanted a dog, actually saying that you had more time might on the surface seem like a great response, but actually if that isn't going to be something that you can stick to in the long run, then that's a huge concern for many of the organisations here tonight in terms of rehoming and just for the long-term welfare of these dogs. Next slide, please, Tiffany. So in terms of what next, that's just been a very quick whistle-stop tour of a huge data set. We've got lots more analyses to do, data such as that, what we've just seen here, so quantitative data where we're comparing what's been going on in these 2 years and also modelling some of the key outcomes, so looking at actual statistical predictors of particularly good or bad practices within that process. We've also got some really nice rich free text data, so asking people with their own voices to tell us about various parts of that puppy buying journey. We're also going to be launching a longitudinal study later this year. So we have, as we said, over 4,000 pandemic puppies that we have data and contacts for, and we'll be following some of those dogs over time. As I said, our fab research tech, Claire Brand, is here tonight, who will be leading that element, and we'll be having some updates hopefully through our webpage. Next slide, please, Tiffany. So just to finish, huge thank yous on this project, where we're going to be indebted to people for a long time, but it's obviously a very big team effort going forwards. As I've mentioned, Claire is our fantastic tech. We're working with Zoe Belshaw, who many of you will know, who is a vet who specialises in qualitative data analysis, and Dan O'Neill, who will be familiar to probably far too many of you, who is a big stats brain. The key thing here obviously is funding, so at the Animal Welfare Foundation for funding this project. And then we've got a huge list here, and it's actually probably less than a quarter, so I'm already going to be grovelling and apologising, but the data set that we have here is just because of the ridiculous number of people who shared it a ridiculous number of times. So huge thank you, and we'll be presenting these data throughout this year and hopefully getting well, the whole point is we want to influence future puppy buying, but we also want to find out what we need to do to try and help the lives of these puppies that we're concerned about right now. So huge thanks, probably gone over massively, and looking forward to the discussion later.
Wow, that was fantastic, Rowena. Thank you so much. And yeah, I obviously share the frustration of the whole "where's mum" thing, because obviously as soon as lockdown came in and puppy delivery was normalised, that meant accountability was compromised for sure. So interesting to see. Brilliant presentation. Looking forward to the rest of the results coming out. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much. I lost signal for a little while there, and I'm sure it's because we have so many people online tonight at our APPD, so I'm not complaining about that at all. The next wonderful presentation is Pets for Homes from Lee Gibson, the UK Managing Director of Pets for Homes, which is a pet marketplace acquired by the Pets Media Group in November 2019. Lee joined the team just shortly after that and is a long-time media industry veteran too. Good for you, Lee. So Pets for Home is the second largest pet marketplace in the world, rehoming in excess of 1 million pets a year. The growing team is on a mission to create a safe and trusted environment for animals, buyers and sellers. Lee lives in Redhill. He has a 2-year-old rescue dog called Dasa, who appears to be a mix of Corgi, Alsatian and Fox. Wow. So over to you, Lee, and what an interesting family member you have there. So we want your presentation and a bit about Dasa too. Thank you.
Listening. Tiffany, are you going to share the screen? Yeah, thank you.
All good. There you go.
Thanks. So thanks for having us, Mark, I think is the first thing to get out of the way. We know that there's probably plenty of people on this call who know about the site, have had experiences with the site, good experiences. Some may have had bad experiences. And, you know, we've definitely been in the press a lot over the last year or so. So we're excited about the opportunity just to talk through sort of the changes we're making on the site and predominantly talk a lot about some of the data that we've seen over the course of the year. And a little like we've also got some research data that we've done from an on-site survey. Next slide, please, Tiffany. So you just heard in the brief intro, and just to give you a little bit of context, really, and 10 minutes does not enough time to do me justice to go through this in a huge amount of detail, but essentially Pets for Homes has a long legacy. 2005 it started, it was a founder couple, there was no full-time employees, and over the time up to 2019 it grew to basically about 1 in 3 pets in the UK are sold through the site, and we've got around 7 million monthly unique users. Okay, give you an idea of the size. The site was acquired by the business I work for, the Pet Media Group, which is a Scandinavian startup. My bosses are both online listening, and basically on a mission, as we said, to basically improve the site and to make it a safe destination for all involved with it. So that was at the beginning of 2019, and as we all know, then the world went, you know, tits up for want of a better word, and it's been an interesting year. We've grown though over that time. We've now got 20 full-time employees. We now have 8 members on our trust and safety team who are effectively our customer service team, so dealing with inquiries that way. And the key thing that we're doing here is introducing a technology layer in order to keep us safe as people and also to keep the animals safe on the site. And there's plenty of different stuff that we've done already, and there's an exciting year ahead in terms of stuff that's coming as we move into 2021. So just very, very quickly, a couple of the things we've done already, things like UK text verification. It seems like a very simple thing, but from a fraud perspective, means people can only actually post when they're in the UK as opposed to overseas. Huge amount of cross-referencing of IP addresses with postcodes and phone numbers. That's to make sure that if people are barred from the site, they can't then do a duplicate account. We reject, and this is probably key, over 40% of listings as they come through now. Okay, so we probably have around 1,400 a day that come on that are trying to get onto the site, and we reject around 40% of them. And launched at the end of August, and we're growing it out as we go, was our deposit functionality, which is the first of its kind on a site of our kind. Effectively, we hold the money so that people don't lose their money. So we hold it in escrow basically, and then release it when both parties are happy. As we move forward into 2021, we've got a whole new platform launch, okay, which is going to enable better technology essentially here. So we're going to move towards a bank grade ID verification for sellers. So that's like when you sign up for Monzo or something like that. It is introducing that sort of level of verification. We're working with some of the stakeholders actually on this call, and some who may not be, to try and work on our own accreditation scheme, client marks effectively. So the SSPCA would be a good example. They have their own accreditation scheme. We're going to work with those guys to push it out to anyone who's selling in Scotland. And then as we move forward into the rest of the year, increased transparency around health data, and hopefully getting also to that point of a digital contract being signed between buyer and seller. Okay, so there's a lot there, and we can go into a lot more depth, but they give you a flavour for some of the stuff that where we've come from, what we've done this year, and where we're moving forward as we move forward. Next slide, please. So, and the next one. So just moving into the trends that we've seen over the course of the year. So we, and I'll be as brief as I can. A lot of this we've covered already. You'll see here as we've got, this is basically site users over the course of the year. All right. And you can see immediately, you know, as we went into lockdown 1, site users doubled, okay, literally overnight. So up from around 2 million weekly users up to 4 million weekly users. Went down again a little bit as we came out of lockdown, into lockdown 2, up it went again, and then as we are at the moment into lockdown 3. Okay, so in other words, demand, which is what we're talking about here effectively, is growing and growing. Next slide, please. And I'll say it in a supply sense. So in terms of how that looks from puppies being advertised on sites, quite an interesting couple of graphs here. So the one on the left effectively shows in lockdown 1, there was actually a huge, this is a year-on-year graph. So you can see the red inverted V is 2020, the year before is 2019. There were less puppies being sold on the site in 2020 against 2019 as we're in lockdown 1. So that is basically the key indicator around why price went up, which we'll talk about in a minute. As you come out of that period, you'll see that there's then quite a big distance between 2020 and 2019. I think probably what we know is from a volatile year, though, it's worth just looking at the longer term trend. And it's key that the longer term trend is upwards, but it's probably not as dramatic. And this is only what we see on our site. Okay, so I can't speak for the industry as a whole, but it's key that although there's an upward amount of puppies looking to be sold, it's not necessarily a massive increase year on year that perhaps we've seen in the press. Next slide, please. And this is the first bit of the survey data that I referred to. So this comes back to a little like we were just talking about with Rowena. You know, why were pets purchased during the pandemic? What are the reasons behind them? So we saw this was from around 19,000 users responding to our on-site survey. Around 72% were planning to get a pet before COVID hit. 86% would have rehomed one if there were no lockdown restrictions at all. And then probably the key bit is the bit on the right, which is around what's going to happen as potentially we get to whatever normal looks like as we move forward. Look, the big issues, there's still 1% here who are saying they would need to rehome their pet. Okay, but the vast majority are saying that there wouldn't be an issue as they move forward. Next slide, please. That difference between the supply and demand has driven a huge increase in price, and all I will show you is the data. I won't comment too much on it, but effectively you've gone from an average of £970 for a puppy on the site, that's pre-March 2020, up to an average now in Jan 21 of just over £2,000. And I'll share this deck later with anyone who wants it to be clear, but I'm going into a little more detail. You can see there the breed types that are really driving that price increase against the average was around 130% increase year on year. Next slide, please. Checking my time as we go. And I think this is something which there's been quite a lot of press around, and actually it was what was discussed, Mark, on the show you mentioned this morning. I had a little look before we came online, and I think this is a very squiggly chart, but effectively shows 2019, 2020, and then the very beginning of 21 around dogs or puppies on site aged 6 months to 1 year. Okay, now what we're looking at here is then, are people reselling their puppies effectively for a financial gain? Now, all we can say at this point is there's lots of squiggles, but effectively at the end of Q4, there was more puppies on the site year on year in that bracket than there were last year. As we've gone into 2021, you can see, which is the little black dotted line, it's actually less than last year. Now, I think what we're trying to say is there's no actual long-term, or that we're not actually at that point where we can say why those puppies are up for sale on the site is probably the key, okay? But we know that actually it's not a huge increase, which perhaps people have been saying that there is, okay? that's from a year-on-year perspective of that puppy age range. Next slide, please. So just onto sort of trust and safety, which is probably the key and what we've been chatting about and we'll chat about later. And the next slide, Tiffany, sorry. I think what you've got here is what we all know is a perfect storm of issues coming around, okay? Supply, demand, and then all the stuff that's been in the press. This is incoming reports to our team effectively over this period. And you can see, so that's year-on-year increases. And I think what you can see here is that these are people who are reporting to us as opposed to actual cases, to be clear, okay? Now, I would twist this slightly. This is scary when you look at it to start off with. So that's an increase in fake adverts, welfare concern, incorrect descriptions, against the rules and license required. There's people saying, is there a license required for these people who are selling effectively? I think the good thing that we would take from this actually is that more people are now aware of what bad looks like and are willing to report it. Okay, and in some regards, and that's what I'll come on to in a minute, the education of the user and of the public, which I think is key in everything that we're talking about here, is therefore being enhanced over this period. And actually the fact they're reporting it to us makes it good, means we can do something about it. I think from our point of view, we now have a lower threshold in terms of, we've now got 8 people who are there and are responding to all of these users as they come through to us and are able to actually action it. And we liaise constantly with local councils and with trading standards, etc., on anything here that needs to be actioned. Next slide, please. And to that education piece, so this is where I think there's some good points and there's also some points that we need to look at. 86% said that this again is from our survey data, to be clear. 86% had read their sort of safe rehoming checklist. 53% had heard of Lucy's Law. It's not enough, Mark, but we're getting there. And less than 3% stated they were planning on rehoming a pet as a gift to someone else. In other words, they were purchasing the pet to give it as a gift to someone else. I think the piece that we've talked about already is that research piece. There's a good over 40% who have spent over 3 months researching what breed they would look for, but there is still nearly 10% who have taken less than a week to actually research what breed they can get to. Next slide. So on the last 2 or 3 slides here, and I think the key is, and we can maybe get into it a little more later, but in our first full year, what have we done and what have we seen as a business? We've made it our aim to get out and speak to all the stakeholders, and many of whom are on this call, and to talk to them and to do what we can in terms of making them understand, or us understanding their concerns and what we can do on the platform. I think we know that we've still got some work to do, and 2021 we've got a good pipeline in terms of this is basically website development in order to make the tech better on the platform, to make it a safer environment, a safer place. The 3 key things that we're talking about here is 1, education, all right, making sure that that's for the users on the site understand all of the key things that they need to be looking for when they're going to see it, when they're looking to interact with a seller on the site, making sure you go and see the mother, etc., etc. Secondly is very much what we call de-anonymizing the seller. Okay, so that's very much the transparency piece, understanding very much like DEFRA's campaign, the person behind the pet effectively. Okay, so who is the person who is selling, putting their the litter up for sale? And thirdly is a lot of that sort of tech safeguards, for instance, the safe deposit functionality, which actually this week it hasn't been mandatory to this point. It's been around 50% take up of sellers on the site, taking it up as a product. This week, we're going to start rolling it out as a mandatory product that puppy sellers need to take up. Next slide. And probably what I would say is, I know there's a couple of people on the call that this will definitely apply to and resonate with. When we talk to people, we do listen and hopefully we do act. So this is very much around docked tails and cropped ears. And if you, on the left was our previous sort of listing rules. Effectively, if you had a vet certificate, or you could prove that the cropped ears was done legally abroad, you could still list the dogs on the site whether that be under the stud section or for sale. We've made a call literally as we started the year to not allow any of those on site. Okay, now that for us, as you can see from this WhatsApp, you may or may not be able to read it, but it didn't go down well with some quarters actually, and we got quite a little bit of you know, people coming and saying that that's not a bad thing, but we believe it's the right thing to do, and we stand by that, and that's why we've brought that on board. And last slide, hopefully I haven't gone too far over, Tiffany, on my timing. And I think just, you know, what we support as a brand and as a business, and what we try and throw our weight behind, and we've, you know, we worked as closely as we could with Mark, for instance, in terms of getting the petition going for the banning of overseas puppy imports. We completely agree with that, and we'll completely continue to support anything we can in that. We definitely think that there needs to be more consolidation around microchipping and a database for that. We want to do more on site, and we're finding it frustrating to actually, there's so many different vendors trying to actually get one solution that fits. It's very hard to do. We see that from an Animal Welfare Act point of view, there's big variances in local council knowledge and how the enforcement and how that actually works. And some people we speak a lot to, some people we don't speak a lot to. And I think we've certainly seen, and we support that Lucy's Law goes UK wide. I think above all, and obviously it's not regulatory change, but we believe that continued education remains the key, all right? And that's continued education of our user base, as well as the tech and the transparency pieces that I talked about a slide or two early. I'll just finish by saying, look, if anyone, we can have a chat later, but I'll also make sure that my email gets sent out, Mark. You're quite happy to do that, and send the deck out if needed. If there's any, we want to work with stakeholders in this industry. So if there's anyone who wants to get in touch with me, please feel free to do so afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. First of all, I want to say thank you for being part of the panel tonight. The messages have been going crazy. And I want to say to everyone, you know, every interaction I've had with you and your team has been so positive, so encouraging, and really quite impressive in terms of your ambition to improve welfare and also to collaborate. You know, you shared the RVC puppy pandemic study that we've just seen. Obviously, some of my petitions, ear cropping, you spoke to Jordan, you act very, very quickly when you're alerted. So I do say to everyone on this meeting who, I mean, this is like the dog welfare community really. If you have suggestions, if you have improvements, just to interact with Lee, please just email, because I've been really impressed with Pets for Homes in terms of the speed of action. And as I say, your desire to improve and protect dogs. So again, thanks for coming on tonight, and it's much appreciated, all your support of what I'm doing as well.
No problem.
Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Mark. And that was a wonderful presentation. It's been an excellent night so far. But please don't go anywhere, because we have 3 more fantastic presentations and then our discussion. Next is Vicky Betton, who is from PDSA, the UK's leading veterinary charity since 2006. Initially establishing their national youth engagement and community education scheme, she now leads their veterinary policy and campaigns team, with responsibility for producing the PDSA Animal Wellbeing PAW report, development of the organisation's research and evidence strategy, as well as their policy and campaigning activities. Vicky also represents PDSA on a number of government and sector working groups, including collaborative work with other organisations to tackle issues identified in the PAW report and those affecting the wider pet population of the UK. So welcome to Vicky, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Vicky, you're going to do your own screen share, aren't you?
Very much, yeah. I'm just sharing it now, so as long as that comes up, should all be good to go. Thank you. So yeah, thank you so much for having me along tonight to talk about the PDSA PAW report. I'm agreeing with all the comments in the chat about missing the pub after an APDAWG session, but hopefully we can have a really good discussion. So I'll try and get through mine within the allotted 10 minutes. So the PDSA Poor Report findings really do help paint that national picture of puppy buying during the pandemic. And we've looked at some of the impacts for dog welfare too. So I'm hoping to skim through all of those. So for those of you who might not know, PDSA provides free and low-cost vet care to the pets of some of the most vulnerable in society, and we're very aware of the issues outlined in the invitation email to this event. They really will impact on our frontline service in our 48 hospitals across the UK. So the Poor Report first launched in 2011. So I'm just to skip my slides forward. There we go. With YouGov, and we launched, we do the Poor Report with YouGov to ensure that we have a consistent and robust methodology for pet welfare surveillance across the UK, as well as a statistically significant and nationally representative data set to really measure the state of pet welfare of our nation, really, our UK pets. So we've been doing this for 10 years. So it was quite a big year in 2020 to launch our 10th report. You know, something else massive happened in that year, which meant we couldn't quite do it how we wanted to. So we built this really comprehensive picture about how the 5 welfare needs of pets are being provided for by owners across the UK. These are enshrined in Animal Welfare Acts. They're a legal obligation that owners have to provide for their animals, but how well they do that is quite often an issue of scale. So that's what POUR looks at. So how well are these needs being provided for? So the initial data set had been collected from a representative sample of both UK pet owners, and we also did a huge survey of the veterinary profession in February 2020. However, it quickly became clear that the COVID-19 pandemic and the UK-wide lockdown were likely to have, as we all know, a real impact on the well-being of our nation's pets. So the Poor Report methodology provided a robust and reputable validated surveillance model through which to monitor these impacts and compare them against the trends across the last decade. So we could really see amongst all the sort of hype and hyperbole what was actually going on with our pets. And we were in a unique position because we had this data set from just before the UK-wide COVID lockdown. So rather than sort of doing a survey in the sort of pandemic, we were able to have this sort of point in time measure just before. So we then conducted a second survey of pet owners in August 2020, still covering the 5 welfare needs, but predominantly focusing on areas thought to be most affected by restrictions. So pet population, pet acquisition, both why and how, diet, preventive health and behaviour. So I'm just going to whiz through as many of those as I can in the time now. So obviously we've had an awful lot of talk tonight about demand, people rushing out to get dogs. One of our measures is pet population, and we have that from across the last 10 years. So as you'll see from this slide, we surveyed 10,000 adults to estimate the UK pet populations, and we didn't find a significant increase in population between our February findings and our August findings, and indeed there weren't really any massively significant spikes from the last few years. So I'll leave the sort of speculation to the Q&A because that's very much, it surprised us. It was very much at odds for what we were seeing. We saw in April 175% increase in Google traffic on related searches. So, you know, getting a puppy, I want a puppy, puppies near me, that kind of thing, which increased to over 200% in more recent months. But as I say, we saw no statistically significant increase in the population for dogs in that period. So it'll be one to discuss. We've sort of hypothesized that it might be around the supply simply didn't meet the demand. There was a lot of intense demand, but you know, we just didn't have that supply enough to cause a population level change. Obviously, we will all know anecdotally of local situations. We wondered if new owners perhaps got puppies in this period. And whether sort of current owners who'd perhaps lost dogs didn't replace them because we saw, you know, they were aware of the guidance. A lot of reputable breeders stopped breeding and held their wait lists. We had government restrictions and guidelines around what we could and couldn't do during lockdown. So lots of restrictions and people perhaps not willing to pay the price that sort of we saw the huge spike in puppy prices that have been discussed by other presenters. Perhaps that was one of the reasons people say, I'm just not not prepared to pay that for a puppy. And again, we can debate how what we feel about that later in the Q&A. But there are some people that say a price spike isn't a bad thing for a dog, to try and help, you know, get that place in society where we would like to see dogs held. So a little bit more analysis of some of those figures. We did see a small shift in some of the age groups that were acquiring dogs, but that was balanced out by a decrease in other age groups. So an increase in 35 to 44, the ages of 35 to 44, and 55 plus. But again, decreases in other areas. So it wouldn't really, we wouldn't really expect to see that population increase. So as I say, it does feel at odds with what we've seen online, on social media, in the press, as well as on our own front lines, those who run rescues, who work in the veterinary profession. But we are aware, while this initial demand doesn't necessarily result in huge population changes, we are going to monitor this closely and continue to see what happens with these figures, because we have seen, as I say, unprecedented demand. We look at why people got their pet, and for dogs, I mean, the top one is they make me happy. Love and affection, companionship. These emotional driven decisions are really, really hard to sort of educate, to challenge, because it's how someone feels, and that's a really interesting stat that just comes again and again through our Paw Report research. We, similar to Rowena, we've got a huge amount of data around what people did before they got their pet, where they went for their advice. Was it online? If so, if it was online, where did they go? How long did they spend looking? And that's all in the report, which I'd encourage you to download. And then we look at what did they actually do? So this is perhaps the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about tonight. So just to whiz through some of those, 50% told us they'd seen puppy with mum, 50% had visited on more than one occasion. Very sadly, 18% would still consider getting a puppy from a puppy farm, but that is down from a finding in 2012, and that was 24%. So we're chipping away. This from the pre-Lucy's Law survey in February, 47% would still consider getting a puppy from a pet shop. So, you know, it's good that they now can't in England. Only 53% of owners would check if the puppy's environment was clean and hygienic, which we would consider just to be an absolute basic measure. And that's down from 71% in 2016. So perhaps people weren't even thinking about the environment in which those puppies were born, let alone all the other things we would like them to look for. And then our little red flag ones, 16% of owners who purchased between March and August had their puppy delivered to them, and 5% met the seller somewhere convenient, mutually convenient, to collect the puppy. Now, that was absolutely within government guidelines at the time. No one was doing anything wrong legally there, but perhaps it's absolutely what we wouldn't want to see in terms of what we were working to achieve for dog welfare. So they're just, to me, those are three huge red flags there. In terms of all the work that's going on around importing, 36% of owners would consider getting a puppy from abroad, and that's an increase from 28% in 2016. So we are seeing a real spike in, well, if I can't get a UK puppy, I'll go somewhere else, which is something we all need to be mindful of. And 91% of vets that we surveyed have seen an increase in pets imported from abroad over the last 2 years. So that's 91%, up from 63% in 2014. So again, just showing the traction on that issue, which is one that we will be working to monitor really closely, given all the measures to work on that issue. So in terms of dog welfare, a lot of key findings on the screen there. Again, I'd encourage you to get the report and just perhaps look at it in more detail, because we haven't got time to go through all of this. But the key care areas for COVID being preventive healthcare. So what we've learned in terms of impact of in that period of time between February and August, a slight, I mean, given the restrictions, it's been nowhere near as bad as people predicted it might have been. We've had a slight decrease in registrations with the vet, slight decrease in vaccinations, slight decrease in microchipping, but nowhere near as bad as it could be. And we saw no population level shifts in kittens and puppies being neutered either, well, young pets being neutered, which was obviously one of the concerns. Now, there will be some obviously that had to have that procedure delayed. but on a population level, it didn't have an impact, which we were all, I think, quite relieved to see, given some of the impacts that could have for us. In terms of behaviour, obviously we've got puppies being bred in far less than ideal situations, lack of socialisation, separation anxiety developing. We're all aware of these issues, and some of the key findings, 20% of owners have said their dog has started showing a new behaviour since lockdown, 5% showing clear signs of distress when left alone, 5% of dogs spending more time in quieter areas of the house. Anyone homeschooling will probably empathise with those dogs right now. And these are owner recognised behaviours. So obviously we all know how much owners don't recognise, some owners don't recognise that dog behaviour. So for them to indicate that there is an issue just shows the scale of this problem. However, as a positive, with people on furlough, people working from home, one of my ones I always look at is how many dogs have been left alone at home with no interaction for more than 5 hours every day, and that's decreased hugely, from 20% of dogs, which is about 2 million, down to 11%, which is 1.1 million. So that's a positive take home. But just to balance that, in terms of our longitudinal research, we now have 46% of veterinary professionals saying they've seen an increase in dog euthanasia due to behaviour issues in the last 2 years. So when you put that longitudinal finding with some of the problems we're seeing from lockdown and the demand we know we have for these new puppies, we're seeing some challenges ahead. The sector worked quite quickly together, in fact very quickly. It was incredible, the collaborative working that everybody came together sort of under the auspices of CFSG and wider to create infographics to provide agreed evidence-based messaging on key issues that we'd indicated, and those were made freely available from all the charities, and especially through the Association of Cats and Dogs Homes, to smaller charities who might not have the resource or perhaps the behavioural or veterinary expertise to write some of that information. So those are all available from the CFSG website for anyone to use, so hopefully trying to mitigate some of the harms. And when various press stories hit, we were able to work quite quickly to mitigate some of those challenging messages, and using some of this data and research as an evidence base. We're concerned about a rise in obesity. We already know it's an endemic problem in our pet population, but we're saying 8% of dog owners say their pet has gained weight during lockdown. I'm sure we can all sympathise. 16% of dog owners feeding more treats, 10% of dog owners feeding more human food, which can sometimes be a positive or a negative depending on your view, but it's definitely still a treat and an additional calorie count, and 8% reporting that their dog has gained weight during lockdown. So something, obviously, when you also consider that we haven't been able to see vets for perhaps routine consults where this might be mentioned, some of those sort of courageous conversations, if you like, taking place, it's a real concern that this is going to be a little bit of a tip of the iceberg problem. The veterinary profession, we look at their views and sort of collate some of the common concerns, and you'll see welfare of breeding establishments right up there at 41%, poor choice of breed for owners' lifestyle, lack of awareness of cost of keeping a dog, exaggerated confirmation in pedigree breeds, lots of things all relating to pre-purchase research and pre-purchase decision making, all up there as real concerns for the veterinary profession. And what else have we learned? We've just learned how much pets mean to people. I mean, we know that anyway. At PDSA, we've got 100 years of keeping pets and their owners together. But 94% say their pet makes them happy. 86% say improves mental health. 84% makes them less lonely. 69% of parents saying having the pet had benefited their children during lockdown. And one to keep an eye on is just that 13% where they say their pet makes them stressed. Doesn't mean to say that's all they do. I think we could all be honest and say our pets do sometimes cause stress. That's an honest response, but it's one to look at when we know euthanasia rates and relinquishment rates are often linked to behaviour and potentially behavioural issues causing quite a lot of stress there. So something to look at, and it is a lot on little furry shoulders. If you're getting a dog hoping that they will somehow cause you to be happy and drive improvements in your mental health, and it's a lot for their end of the bargain when they haven't potentially signed up for it. So it does help to explain that intense emotional driver. So as I mentioned before, there's the link to download some more of those infographics from CFSG. And I just wanted to very quickly end with just a bit of a shout out really to PDSA and other veterinary colleagues. I mentioned their work earlier, providing that essential veterinary care during lockdowns. And as we know, physical health really is the cornerstone of good animal welfare, and veterinary teams, along with other key workers, are just doing an incredible job in really challenging circumstances. You can see the impact on PDSA on the slide. We're looking at 2,350 remote consults per day. That's 627,000 across last year, 417,000 callback requests, and over 17,000 emergency operations done, you know, in bubbles with social distancing, with car park consultations. It's incredibly challenging. We've seen an unprecedented additional demand for our help from those very vulnerable pet owners. Visits to our online eligibility checker rising by 59% last year, and calls to our hospitals rising by 81%. So, you know, it really is a life-saving service to the most vulnerable in our society, and we're absolutely determined that we minimise as much as we possibly can the impact of a human health crisis on animal welfare. We're going to keep monitoring these impacts, we're going to keep sharing our findings, and really trying to highlight and drive collaboration to drive positive change where this impact takes its toll. So please do download the report. Ask any questions you want, get in touch, and we've also got a launch event webinar with a number of experts much better qualified than me to talk about all these issues, that's linked from our website. So please do have a look at that if you want any more details about the findings. Thank you so much for listening.
That was awesome, Vicky. And we've known each other for what, nearly 10 years probably, and I've always been a massive fan of what you do and what the PDSA does. So thanks for that presentation, and really, really interesting. Also, thank you for mentioning CFSG and the work that Marissa does and collaboration behind the scenes. It's essential, especially in lockdown when I was called on to do a lot of interviews. Those fact sheets were just brilliant to basically read off. And I also wanted to say that a lot of the stuff everyone's hearing tonight is based on, you know, surveys and statistics, and the same goes for petitions. When something comes to you and it's a link, please spend just a few minutes to fill stuff in or to sign and share a petition. It makes such a difference, as you've seen tonight, because we're the people that sort of get all that stuff, and then we can turn that into change and protecting more animals and potentially changing legislation, and, you know, working with people like obviously Lisa Cameron. So thanks, Vicky, and I'll pass over to Lisa to introduce the next guest, who is a really, really good mate, and we've also known each other for probably nearly 10 years as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. And we're running slightly behind time, so if I can just gently suggest that we keep the presentations to 10 minutes, we will have time for discussion at the end. Our next guest is Mike Webb, who is from one of another fantastic dog welfare organisation, Battersea, Head of Policy and Public Affairs at Battersea. His team look after the political and campaigning activity, publishing reports on breed-specific legislation, dog breeding regulation, and getting more housing to allow tenants to keep their pets, as well as leading the push for 5-year sentences for animal cruelty. In December 2020, Battersea published a report looking at the impact of the pandemic on rescue charities and looked at the likely impact of the recession on pets. So welcome to APDAWG, Mike, and
thank you very much
for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Lisa, and thank you for the opportunity, Mark, to come and speak to everybody this evening. If we kick off, Tiffany, I'll try and be as brief as I possibly can. As Lisa mentioned, we published a report in December 2020 looking at the impact of on COVID. We were quite tight with how we drew that. Basically, we knew that Vicky was going to come up with her traditional annual wonderful compendium of stats around pet ownership. So we looked particularly at welfare organisations and what the impact has been on our sector, on the rescue sector. There are over 1,000 rescues in the UK, and our view, as we've put to government consistently through this, is that it's an absolutely vital social function that we can't do without. However, whenever you see a political debate on charities in Westminster, it invariably focuses pretty much solely on human charities. Now, there are strong reasons for that. Nevertheless, animals still need their time in the spotlight, as it were. Rescue charities are almost exclusively privately funded, and the impact on our ability to provide services as a sector has been fairly significantly devastated by COVID. Any organisation that relies upon a charity shop has seen the charity shop closed. Anyone that relies upon big fundraising events hasn't been able to do them, and face-to-face fundraising stopped for considerable periods of time. So what did all this mean for our ability to look after animals? Next slide, please, Tiffany. We found, as everybody else has said, that interest in pet ownership as a concept has soared considerably during lockdown. We saw an increase in 53% within the first few months at Battersea, and we did some survey work later in the year to ask some questions of people who had taken on a pet for the first time during lockdown. 31% of them said that they'd never considered becoming a pet owner before. Now, that's logically both a good thing and a bad thing. It's great that more people are looking to discover the joy of owning pets, caring for pets, and looking after animals. But at the same time, it means there's quite a lot of very inexperienced pet owners out there. So how can we help them? We're also concerned to see some figures coming out of government that certificates for bringing in animals legally to the country increased by 94% year on year. Now, those are the ones that we know about. How much bigger is the illegal trade? How much has that grown during the pandemic? We can only speculate, but given that we've seen such a significant increase in pets and we know that traditional sources have struggled to meet that, we can only assume it's quite a severe problem. However, there have been, as was touched on earlier, some great positives. The number of dogs not left alone for significant periods of time has increased by a factor of about 4. It went up in our survey from 15% to 58%, and reports of separation-related behaviours decreased sharply, which is great. However, as was touched on earlier, we don't know whether this is simply going to be a short-term benefit, and when the furlough scheme ends and people start going back into offices more often, will we see the dogs being left and becoming greatly worried by that? Again, how can we help owners prepare for that? Next slide, please, Tiffany. Can I actually take the one after this and then I'll come back to it? Sorry, this was my fault. We also looked at what impact has the first lockdown, looking at the period through to sort of September time, have on rescues. We saw a significant crisis in income, and this is particularly keenly felt through the smallest charities. The organisation is doing such really important work across the country, but on a shoestring, often volunteer-led, or will have 1 or 2 staff. Clearly, if you have a very small number of people working at your organisation, if one of them has to self-isolate, it causes a huge difficulty in how you can look after the animals in your care. In June, 20% of the organisations that ADCH surveyed, which was not just ADCH membership, it was the whole rescue sector. They predicted they would have insufficient funds to make it through to 2021, and yet no access was given to the Frontline Charities Relief Fund for animal welfare charities. We've also found that everybody's had to innovate and innovate very quickly. Traditional operating models and best practice has no longer been possible. We can't do face-to-face meetings in the same way for people and their animals as we always would, because we have to respect the need for social distancing requirements and try and have as few humans on site as we possibly can. We had to close our doors to the public for the first time in 160 years, one of 71% of charities that did that. That didn't mean that we shut, I want to be very clear on what that means. That didn't mean that we shut to emergency intake. We remained open for that throughout, as did almost every other rescue charity. But it did mean the person who may have been thinking, oh, I'd like to come to Battersea and see, and perhaps talk to someone about whether a dog is right for me, we couldn't have that conversation anymore. Are we all right to just step back to the previous one? Sorry, Tiffany. So this is actually new information that's only come out in the last day or so. On ADCH's behalf, we worked with them to put another survey to ADCH members in January this year, looking at, well, how is the sector getting on now? It's interesting that the amount of contact that people have had from the public wanting to rehome, expressing an interest, is still up 80% on where it was a year ago. 37% of rescues have seen an income drop of over 50%. There aren't many organisations anywhere that can continue to perform the same level of service if your income drops by 50% over a prolonged period of time. And that's why about half of rescues have had to reduce staff numbers. It's not an easy decision. It's a painful decision that people have had to take, but they've had to take it to be able to continue caring for animals. We've also seen that through the pandemic, the rescues have struggled to get access to non-emergency vet care, such as chipping and neutering, and this may contribute, particularly with neutering, to a population increase further down the line. And we're also seeing some evidence, largely anecdotally, and this is something we'll be looking at some more, that unsold puppies or unwanted litters are now being sold on where they were once given to rescue centres, because people are recognising that there is a marketable value in dogs, perhaps more than they used to be. Sorry, Tiffany, can we move on to the one after? But there's a positive picture from across our sector, actually, in that whilst we have struggled at times to access government support, we've done a great job as a sector of supporting each other. The ADCH Emergency Fund was set up specifically with a view to helping organisations with a turnover of £500,000 or less. So the smallest rescues, and this has provided over £300,000, which they can spend as they need to. When the pandemic started, people were struggling to get best information or to learn from each other, recognising that there was probably quite a lot of answers out there, but how did they find them? So ADCH set up an emergency Facebook forum, which is still going on. There's a really useful place that rescues can talk to each other. When there were supply difficulties around getting food to rescues, that was managed through ADCH in the early days. And rescue organisations have come together to make combined approaches to government and parliament, recognising that, frankly, fighting this pandemic and being able to look after animals nationwide is considerably bigger than the needs of any individual organisation. I'd also, as Vicky mentioned, pay tribute to a couple of other places. CFSG has done a wonderful job under the chairmanship of Chris Lawrence in providing quick, simple and understandable, and that last point is very, very important, compliance guides and infographics for businesses and the public to make sure that everybody knew how to stay healthy and how to stay safe and how to stay legally compliant during the pandemic. It was done at a very great speed at first, but an awful lot of key work has been done. I'd also say that the DEFRA animal welfare team has made life considerably easier by having a continually open door to the rescue sector, that where we had to ask questions about does doing X, Y, or Z still comply with the law, providing us quick, easy, and understandable answers. Okay, spin on, please, Tiffany. Thank you. But one thing we are acutely aware of is we're now living in a time of significant national financial difficulty. And so we took some time to study the previous recessions and their impact on animal welfare and provision of animal welfare services. We know that recessions naturally drive animal relinquishment. It's tragic, but in some ways logical. And so we looked at the previous recessions over the last 30 years and what have they meant for animal welfare and what could we project from that. In 2011, local authorities dealt with 30% more strays than they were doing before the 2008 crash. It's a slightly misleading statistic because the legal responsibility for strays changed during that period. But nevertheless, we extrapolated from that a 27% increase, which is about the average of previous recessions, in straying that we've seen through previous recessions. If that happened now, that equates to just over 25,000 extra stray dogs over the next 5 years. They've got to be cared for. They've got to be looked after. Who will be around to do so? Because those who handle strays are financially struggling, not just the rescue sector, but obviously local authorities as well that are continually cutting services as they deal with budgetary difficulties. But the point that's been touched on, that there is often a risk of getting lost, perhaps when you start getting into the numbers of this, is that pets are absolutely part of the human solution, as well as our obviously natural focus on animal welfare. We did a survey, as I mentioned, of pet owners who had taken a pet on during 2020 called Rescues to the Rescue, and 75% of the people, this was all rescue pet owners, had said that they felt that their pet had rescued them during the pandemic. Have the next slide, please, Tiffany. So finally, we feel there is a strong case for government support for animal welfare organisations. We've made that case. A few times, and so far with perhaps less success than we may like. We remain concerned that the current environment has been extremely advantageous for disreputable sellers, particularly, as was touched on earlier, the fact that rescues and what we may term the better breeders have often struggled to manage a significant spike in demand. We also feel that for the benefit of both humans and animals, landlords should be encouraged to allow tenants to take on pets in greater numbers. There should be fewer places advertising that you can't bring your pet with you when you move into a tenancy. And Zoopla identified that I think 7% of the listings on their website were deemed as pet friendly. That's not enough. As is an issue I know, Mark, you've been working on a lot recently. Post-Brexit, there is an opportunity now to strengthen border controls and tackle puppy imports. We feel now is the opportunity to grasp that particular nettle and encourage the government to do so. And finally, even though there is a pandemic on, some of the original requirements do not go away. Buyers must insist on seeing the puppy with its mother. They must insist when they're getting a puppy that the dog should be microchipped with the breeder recognised as the first owner on that microchip record. These little things are starting to slide quite a lot, and so we're trying to work as hard as we can when we meet would-be pet owners to encourage them to remain vigilant. Can you spin on, please, my final slide? I just encourage everybody to have a look at our report. I've given quite a whistle-stop tour of what it covers, this whole swathe of stuff like pet theft that we got into that I didn't feel there was time to get into now. This is intended to be our first look of at least 2 that we will be doing at COVID and its impact on pet welfare, and we will be writing another one later in 2021. So if anyone has thoughts of issues that perhaps, having looked at the report, aren't covered in that they feel we've missed out on or that we should cover in a second report, please do get in touch and suggest that, and we'd be happy to discuss it. Thanks very much.
Awesome, thanks Mike. As always, brilliant stuff, full of information. And just to remind everyone, you can download the Battersea report from, I'm assuming, your website. Thanks for also mentioning the legal importation of puppies. There's so much focus often on the illegal importation and smuggling. The legal imports obviously are inappropriate ways to import puppies, but also provide the template and facilitate the illegal puppy trade. And also, just from me personally and my team, thanks to Battersea for all your support of Lucy's Law. Going forward, over to Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Next, certainly not least, but our final presenter of the night is from Cariad, our Linda Goodman, award-winning creative director to award-winning dog welfare campaigner. Linda is a founder of Cariad. Care and Respect includes all dogs and the hugely successful Foster First programme. During her advertising career, she worked on the pet industry accounts, including Pedigree, Nestle, Purina and Petplan, and her capacity as a volunteer animal welfare campaigner. She spent over a decade exposing the barbaric exploitation of dogs in Welsh puppy farms. So as well as being an original grassroots team responsible for the passing of Lucy's Law in England, Cariad has also led the campaign to introduce Lucy's Law in Wales, which will finally become law in a matter of weeks. So over to Linda.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, APDAWG, for existing. What a great forum this is for important issues for dogs. I'm going to do my best Chris Whitty impersonation with the help of Tiffany. The next slide, please. Right, I'm taking it from a campaigner's perspective, what's happened in the last 10-ish months. The 3 Ps of the pandemic, in my view, were paper, toilet paper, and look at how that was just wiped off the, no pun intended, but wiped off the shelves. I heard a snigger, as if it was more important than food. But yes, toilet paper went flying out. Okay, moving on, next slide, please. The second P was the PlayStation 5, probably the most heralded launch of a games console in history. The thing about the PlayStation 5 being the most sought after gift for Christmas in particular was that stocks ran out. And that meant people had to wait. And then they heard they weren't going to get stocks in again until 2021. And you know what? They had to wait. And if they didn't wait, then they got scammed. And what was interesting about the PlayStation 5 was that on eBay, there were people actually bidding up to 550 of your Earth pounds on a photograph of a PlayStation 5, which is what they got in the post. Next slide, please. And the third, obviously, the P for puppies. Now, we did see an awful lot of, well, I think misleading information, which was UK faces a puppy shortage as demand for lockdown companion soars. We saw this happening a lot. And if anything, did it actually facilitate people's urge to buy a puppy because they thought, oh my God, if I don't buy one now, there won't be any. It was extremely misleading. The Financial Times headline, very misleading because that was specific to kennel club breeders. And in fact, there was no shortage of puppies at all. There will not be a shortage of puppies at all. But we will move on to that in a moment. Next slide, please. The result of all of this, really, well, I guess the toilet paper scenario and the puppy scenario is quite apt. And I think we should blame Andrex because they were selling puppies on a roll. Next slide, please. Right, buyer beware. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is what we saw too much of during the pandemic. We saw people telling us about their terrible stories of puppies that had died after they'd purchased them. We saw dead puppies being dumped that were no longer wanted by puppy farmers. We saw illegal trade. We did see some raids, which is great. We've seen some very successful raids just recently, but really it was everywhere. Every time you opened a paper or went on the internet, there was something about puppies on there. So it wasn't really as if there wasn't a warning out there for the public to be careful. And we did advise people that this was not a good time to buy a puppy. Next slide, please. So what was feeding this obsession? Next slide, please. Well, look, there was lots of stuff out there, really. It seemed like whenever you turned on the TV, there was a new program about dogs or puppies. But we even had articles looking at dogs in terms of investment opportunities, in terms of ROI. What's a better bet, Bitcoin or a cockapoo? We have programs like 12 Puppies Than Us. We had the big to-do and a hoo-ha over the BBC still planned program on how to breed puppies for money. And even, you know, lately the Pooch Perfect. I think when we watch the next episode of that, when we see the dogs being dyed all sorts of crazy colors, are we going to see Don't Try This at Home at the front of it? Who knows? There's a lot of kind of irresponsible stuff going on out there. And also really think about it. Would you sell a car to WeBuyAnyCar.com if you didn't see Philip Schofield swooning over a puppy saying, he's got my eyes? Or would you buy a chocolate digestive from McVitie's if you didn't see puppies coming out of the pack? There is all this kind of subliminal stuff going on out there, making people want puppies. And the other thing which we saw a lot of was the incredibly beneficial effect on our mental health. Well, you don't have to tell me about how great having a dog or dogs are for mental health. My dogs have seen me through significant health problems, the suicide of my husband, and now the unfortunately advanced state of dementia in my mother. having a dog can save your life. Now, the wonderful thing about dogs is, yes, they have a wonderful effect on our mental health. They're almost like Prozac with feet. But when we see these articles, how often do we see the reverse? It's very much a one-way street, isn't it? They're good for our health. Are we good for theirs? When we talk about mental health in people, we talk about behavioural problems in dogs, but actually it equates to the same thing, doesn't it? Next slide, please. We also saw during this puppy pandemic obsession, next slide, please, dog theft. Okay, the dog theft situation is completely out of control. We all know that that's certainly been in all the papers, and it's getting a much more violent thing. This isn't just people just stealing a dog out of a garden anymore, that we're talking about armed burglars breaking in, we're talking about people being thrown to the ground. You know, we're turning into a violent society because everybody thinks that stealing a dog is a great way to then make some money. That's obviously an issue, the pet theft debate. We've got some amazing people, campaigners working on that. Dr. Dan Allen, Sampa, Debbie Matthews, total superstars, trying to drive this forward to be taken seriously as a violent crime, which it is. Thank you to those guys. Next slide, please. I'm rushing through just because I know we're short of time. The other thing that we saw during the pandemic was the abandonment of specifically older dogs. This was happening alarmingly in a lot of the smaller rescues where people were lying and basically saying, oh, I can't keep my older dog. And in the afternoon, the rescue discovered they'd bought a puppy. What a terrible state of affairs. A loyal companion for 10, 11 years being dumped because someone wanted a cute puppy. But how long were they going to want that puppy for? We saw deformed puppies dumped. We saw people just abandoning dogs and disappearing. There were so many stories, you know, and I wrote about this for Dogs Today, and I actually meant every word of what I said in that tweet. To the person who just handed your 11-year-old dog into a rescue, claiming you're moving home and the landlord won't allow dogs, when in fact you aren't moving home and you've just bought a new puppy, you are a disgusting human being. And I really still mean that, you are. So next, please. Predictable consequences of all this puppy mania? Well, surge of lockdown puppies bought during pandemic being sold, resold, or given to rescue homes. Now, the thing is, the majority of these puppies that have served their purpose, really effectively for a lot of people, and now are not wanted, are not being handed into rescues. They're being resold because people want to recoup the money that they have, quote, invested in them. And we're talking thousands. What a terrible life we are handing dogs from pillar to post. And what sort of behavioural problems is that going to lead to? So pretty dire state of affairs really for dogs. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know that this is in fact about puppies, but really what I'd like to do now is talk about the giant elephant in the room. Thank you for that, Tiffany. I'll move on now. And we'll talk about the supply and demand issue of puppies. So firstly, I wanted to tell you about a lunch I had. I had lunch on the 11th of December 2015. I'm sure a lot of you did. Mine went on for about 4 hours, and it was pretty good. It was great company, and it was with the CEO of the Pet Industry Federation. It was I love the guy. He's great fun to talk to, and you know, he's pretty honest about stuff. He's a business person. So but I wanted to see if we could get the pet industry's backing on the third party puppy selling issue. And this was before it was called Lucy's Law, because beautiful Lucy was still alive at the time. Anyway, long story short, PIF didn't support puppy dealing, which was great. They weren't so keen on a ban on pet shops, but anyway, that went ahead in England. But it was made very clear to me that any new legislation had to ensure that it didn't affect the number of dogs in the UK population, i.e. that had to be maintained or hopefully continue to grow, which it was about 7 to 8 million back then, because this was good for the pet industry businesses for profit. So I totally got that. That's honest. That's business. And the more dogs there are in the UK, the better it is for pet food manufacturers, for pet insurance companies, vets, groomers, etc. However, at the same time as campaigners were starting the push for a ban on third-party puppy selling, we suddenly started to hear that the UK needs to produce anything from between 450,000 to 1.2 million puppies a year, depending on who you were talking to meet public demand, and in order to maintain the level of dog ownership in the UK. But disturbingly, this business mantra was now coming from certain large corporate charities that influence government decision-making, and it's continued to the present day. In fact, even in November, when the puppy smuggling debate, the EFRA evidence was provided, it was still being said by the same people. And now it's in order to maintain the current population of dogs at 9 million. So here's the thing, I found it disturbing to see these large charities appear to U-turn on their original positions of welfare and align themselves with the pet industry's position. And what was even more confusing is that the same large charities continue to this day to express concern about the levels of dog abandonment. So, you know, firstly, raising concern about whether there are enough puppies bred to meet public demand, in my opinion, that shouldn't be the concern of any rescue or charity. I don't see how you can have it both ways. So the duality of position must be deeply confusing to the public. But which is it? Keep the dog population at 9 million or deal with the massive issue of dog abandonment? You know, they're not comfortable bedfellows. I can assure you that you will never hear a small rescue say that. You'll never hear a small rescue say they're worried that there aren't enough dogs in the UK. They're more likely to tell you that there are too many dogs in the UK and not enough suitable homes. And that it's too easy to buy a dog and too easy to dispose of one. The commoditization of puppies is deeply concerning. Comparison I made earlier with the toilet paper and the PlayStation 5, well, it wasn't just a glib narrative. The big difference is that if we run out of toilet paper, we have to wait for it to be restocked. And if we run out of a PlayStation 5 consoles, we have to wait for manufacturers to produce more. If people need or want something and it's out of stock, they can wait if they have to. So, as I said before, there is not now, nor has there ever been, a shortage of puppies in the UK. Not during the pandemic, which continues, and not for the foreseeable future. But what if there was a shortage of puppies? What if the unimaginable actually happened and, you know, people had to wait for a healthy, well-socialized puppy to become available? Would that be such a terrible thing? Really? You know, right now we have instantly available puppies for sale. You can make a phone call in the morning and have a puppy by that afternoon. And I'd like to point out that in order for that to be possible, to have these instantly available puppies available to meet public demand, it actually requires overbreeding. In other words, producing more puppies than are actually required. But who's worrying about all those surplus puppies? Because I can assure you they're out there. The ones that don't get sold. Who's worried about those? Well, they're either being dumped, killed, or held back to breed yet more puppies from. See, in my view, and I know it's possibly not the most popular one, whilst it's easy to blame the public, yes, sure, there are members of the public who are, in hindsight, should have done things differently. And also, I would say, you know, no one's holding a gun to anybody's head to buy a puppy. And they're not holding a gun to anyone's head to go on any specific website. You know, Cariad had 200% more complaints from the public in this last 12 months, or 10 months really, than we had in the previous year. And, you know, the public had bought puppies via ads on Pets for Homes, yes, Gumtree, free ads, pre-loved, Facebook, now there's a real issue to sort out, Instagram, Spock, I know, I find that hard to believe too, And also, sadly, the kennel clubs find a puppy portal. So you will find anywhere you look right now is not a safe place, which is why I'm happy to be working with Pets for Homes, because they're the only website that has actually actively approached us to see what we can do to change things, and they're listening. So we would like at least one place, if we're going to be selling puppies or advertising puppies for sale online, we'd at least like to have one safe space where the public can go. But, you know, we weren't just contacted by puppy buyers, we were also contacted by breeders, deeply concerned about who they're selling their puppies to. And these weren't people who bred a lot of puppies. They may have had one left over from a litter that was already promised to people the year before. But because people were buying puppies to sell on, they were getting really worried as well. So, you know, it's a lose-lose situation all round. But back to my final summing up, which I'm sure you'll be pleased. In my view, the puppy pandemic has come about because of the easy availability of instant puppies. And really, you know, breeding enough puppies to meet public demand is such a first world problem, isn't it? So I think that the narrative really needs to change. And it needs to change from the large stakeholder charities in particular, in order for there to be a more balanced and honest view of what's going on. I mean, look, it's not that long ago that there was so much concern by certain large charities that we didn't have enough puppies to meet demand that they were considering having their own breeding programs. Yes, just take that in for a moment. Okay, so here's the thing. If the government has the powerful pet industry advising them in one ear and the powerful charities advising them in the other, and both are saying exactly the same thing to the decision makers, my question is, who is going to represent what's really in the best interest of dogs? So before I hand over to you, Mark, I'd like to run the poll, Tiffany, and see what you think. The question is a simple one. Is it essential that the supply of puppies in the UK meets public demand? Please vote now.
Linda, can you see the percentage of who's voted?
I can't see, I actually can't seem to see anything. Hang on, I'm back.
That's all right. I'll just keep notes. So we have about 290 people in the call right now, and we have about 220 who have filled in. So if anybody else wants to pop in a yes or no before we close the poll. Oh, there's a few more. One last second, everyone. Okay. Can you see?
Aha, right. Seems 93% of you don't think we should be having to meet the supply of puppies in the UK to meet public demand. I'm very glad. I'm very pleased to hear that. And if that happened to be the end result, then I think a lot of our current problems would probably go away. Thanks for listening, and I'm open to any questions as well.
That was awesome, very thought-provoking, and just brilliant to hear a different view. Personally, for sure, quality over quantity every time, and it's really time now to change, I think, the public behaviour and realising that it's actually better to wait for something that's well bred rather than something that's born on a Russian puppy farm and can be imported completely legally. I'm going to pass over to Lisa to maybe say a few words. I think we're going to extend to 9:30 just so we get a bit of discussion. I hope that's okay with everyone. It's amazing to get all these people in one place and to be able to answer questions. So 9:30 we'll go to. So Lisa, if you want to say a few words, and then Tiffany, maybe you can sort out some questions to the panel.
No, I just want to thank all of the presenters. It's been a fantastic evening and has really shone a spotlight on the issues in relation to lockdown for puppies and dogs right across the United Kingdom, and animal welfare issues. And on the one hand, we've been speaking about how much value having a pet is to mental health and to people's well-being, and I think that's well appreciated. But on the other, we have to also look at the impact on the welfare of those dogs, and particularly post-lockdown too, when people do return to work. If many people do return to jobs that they have to go to each day rather than from home, what impact will that have too? So the long-term impact, I think, be absolutely horrendous. So thank you to everybody for the research, for the work you're doing. What I want to do before 9:30 is have some actions that we can take forward in Parliament, perhaps requesting a debate on a particular issue, or putting in some written questions from the various organisations to government on a number of different issues. So I'm looking forward to hearing the comments and questions that people have. Mark can lead that part of tonight, and I'll make some points for taking back to the House of Commons, and we can raise those issues with government in questions and also in debates coming forward. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Lisa. So Tiffany, do you want to see what questions have been sent in and maybe cherry pick a few?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I know that there's been quite a few, I think, probably questions and discussions in the chat, but I have just popped in to ask everybody, if you do want to ask a question, just pop it into the Q&A. It will be easier for us to manage. So I'll start with the first one from Allison. When is the BVC paper due to be published? Does anyone have an answer for this?
Is that the RVC paper? Is that Rowena's paper?
Yeah, I think that's the one.
That's a good question. If it's RVC, hopefully we'll have it submitted in the next couple of months, and a little bit of how long's a piece of string in terms of how quickly it will go through peer review, but we'll hopefully have it out by late spring, early summer. And of course we'll send it to anybody who is interested. We have RVC email address, pandemicpuppies@rvc.ac.uk, if anybody wants anything more about the study.
Excellent, thank you. A question for Lee. Will you be able to stop advertising if they're not a licensed breeder, and how can you track this?
Reading it, actually. Will you be able to stop that?
Oh, sorry, can you see it?
Effectively, you don't have to be a licensed breeder to advertise on the site. It's probably the answer to that question. That might not be a popular answer to the question, but that's the fact right now. It's still, 2 or more litters, and you have to. I've seen quite a few in here, Tiffany, actually, for me, and you might not get to them all. So I'll probably just can I just do a blanket answer to some of them? Yeah.
You're doing quite a lot, so go ahead.
I think a lot of them come down to technically what we can do on the site from a tech point of view. So there's several questions around, for instance, can we around bank grade verification, and there's several questions around people who potentially use stock photos of mothers, for instance, and put them, different listings that way. I think where hopefully what I said in the deck is we can't do everything at once. We've done quite a bit of stuff, and we've got a lot more in our pipeline that we're rolling out. Something like stopping the stock photos. We are going to be introducing that. So that's sort of photo checking software that you can will stop that. ID verification to stop sort of burner phones and the like. What we will effectively, that's going to stop someone posting multiple litters under the same identity if they're not licensed. All right. It might not stop their mother, their brother, their auntie posting a litter, another litter. What we hope to do at that point is more the IP address and the postcode level identification, stopping it at that point. Okay, I mean, I would, as I think we've probably all talked about on the call, every time, you know, this has opened up a Pandora's box of issues that we're constantly trying to plug away at with technology effectively in order to make a safer environment. So hopefully that sort of answers some of the questions, Tiffany, a little bit. It's worth me saying, you know, there's a few people asking, I think Debbie, for instance, has been asking around, can we support petitions and the like on the site? Debbie, I think we've got a call potentially with one of your colleagues soon to talk about that. And I think Axel got onto you, so we can definitely do that. And I'm going to give my email address now, and you can either write it down, anyone who wants to. I will try and get back to everyone if they can. We're willing to help stakeholders is probably the best way of putting it. And we'll try and answer everything we can. So it's Lee, L-E-E, at petmediagroup.com. Okay, petmediagroup.com. Feel free to send me a note and I will try and get through them depending on how many there are. Ask me any other questions though, Tiffany, but hopefully that covers that one.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm scrolling through and they seem to be all for you and a lot of them. Here's one that perhaps can draw in some of all of you. Still reeling from how badly seized dogs can be treated and for such long periods in clear contravention of the AWA. What can be done about this now, if anything? So whoever wants to kind of respond.
So basically, I'm collating as much information as I can regarding this. One of the big problems with the situation is that the time that the dogs are kennelled, the owners are often going through a complicated court case in respect of their dog, maybe being of pit bull type or as being seized under Section 3 of the Dangerous Dogs Act. So they've got that court case going on. Their focus is obviously trying to get their dog home. Unfortunately, to make a complaint regarding the treatment of the dog in kennels, most of the time, this is going to have to be through private prosecution, which is very costly. So we're looking at ways that people can make these complaints, whether it be through the individual police forces, or taking out private prosecutions. It's something that we're looking at. But to be honest, by the time they get their dogs back, they're just so relieved to get their dogs back that that's it for them. And that's something that I want to try and move forward with.
Thank you, Helen. Does anybody else want to comment on? Shall I move on to another question? Okay, if anybody can comment on anonymous question, can I ask, has there been an increase in some breeds that suffer from various health conditions, such as the brachy breeds, being left at rescue centers because people bought them impulsively during the lockdown?
I'm happy to respond on this, at least from our own experience. I think the answer is not really yet, but we're expecting there's going to be. That rather mirrors a little bit the experience of rescue centres generally, which is that intake numbers haven't necessarily recovered hugely yet, but we're expecting that they're going to. And I think given that we know that brachycephalic breeds are increasingly popular and are sold for more and more money, I think we're expecting that there'll be a greater part of the dog population for quite some time to come. So we're expecting that that will be the case in the future, but obviously we're not entirely sure when.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just looking through. Equally, if any of the panelists see a question that they would like to respond to, please just jump in if there's something that you'd like to answer. I see one here for Linda. Hi, Linda. What is the situation with Lucy's Law in Wales? Today I saw petitions, the petitions committee discussing how it is being delayed.
Okay, so the minister Leslie Griffiths has promised that Lucy's Law will become law by the end of the Senate term, which is the end of March. And just after that, there are the Welsh elections. So, you know, it's not rocket science. I don't think that they would be very wise to delay it until the election, because who knows, another government might come in and do it straight away. Not saying that I'm not a favourite, you know, but I have to be honest. I'll be totally honest in this and say to you that of all the governments in the UK that I've had the pleasure of working with Mark on this, and Scotland was the most amazing, fantastic, joyful experience. England, no problem at all. Northern Ireland, amazing. They're doing the campaigning themselves. Wales has to have the most hostile government when it comes to, yes, are you laughing? But they are the most hostile government when it comes to anything to do with companion animal welfare. And I would right now, for all the people watching, I would say, you know, we really need to think clearly and about whether or not we need a dedicated minister for companion animal welfare, rather than it being lumped in with livestock, farming, food and everything else. Because of all the things that matter in Wales, companion animals don't seem to matter at all. Having said that, I feel I've had enough private messaging from Assembly members in the last week that have assured me that it will be happening very, very soon. So I would just watch this space in the next few weeks.
Excellent. Thank you, Linda. I can see a few questions around this similar theme. So whoever wants to comment, what is your opinion on importing rescue puppies from abroad? For those who wish to adopt a rescue rather than shop, there seem to be, you know, a lot of rescue puppies available from rescues importing puppies into the UK. So what does anybody have any views on this they would like to provide?
I'll jump in as I have an opinion. I have absolutely no problems with rescue dogs being imported into the UK, whatever age. And indeed, the Ban Puppy Imports campaign is all about banning puppies that are intended for sale for profit in the UK, so non-rescue. So that's where that campaign lies. And also we are hearing that progress has been made, and hopefully we'll have some change this year. But really, for me, if you want to get a dog, you go direct to the breeder, direct to a rescue, or another option could be to have an imported rescue pup, or to go abroad, buy the dog and bring it back yourself, which doesn't obviously involve a change of ownership. So I personally would endorse rescuing dogs from anywhere. It's, you know, the dog can't choose where it's born or has been abused or abandoned. So rescue dogs all the way. For me, it's all about controlling a new legislation to end puppies under 6 months coming into the UK, because that is just not appropriate.
I think as well, Mark, there's something about how it's done. So using a reputable rescue who's got that support when dogs are brought over, you know, there's backup support, behavioural support, the right veterinary support's been given. I know a lot of charities on the front line are really struggling with dogs that have been brought over who do perhaps have some of the health problems, everything from you know, tapeworms right the way through to a lot more serious issues. And I would just caveat that there are really clear guidelines on how to do it really well, and loads of rescues doing it brilliantly, and some doing it absolutely for the right reasons, but perhaps not considering those health implications, so that it's, you know, absolutely hands down rescue, but done in the right way. And I know there's a lot of people working really hard on that.
Thanks, Vicky. And I just want to again jump in and just say that I don't know if anyone caught the One show a few weeks ago, but they showed a case of a very, very responsible rescue importing a dog from Cyprus. And Sam Gaines, who's I think watching from the RSPCA, did a wonderful job of a piece to camera, and basically said it should be from a reputable organisation, like you just said, with rescue backup preferably. The appropriate health checks must have been carried out, and as you also just said, but to be behaviourally assessed. So when he or she does come to the UK, it does fit into the family, rather than sort of a feral dog plucked from a foreign street and expected to behave like a pet overnight in a flat somewhere in a city. So yeah, I totally echo what you say. It has to be done properly if it's going to be done at all, like everything really, and well researched.
Absolutely. There's a really interesting comment as well, Mark, just saying that Sarah Heath made a point at the end of the Poor Report launch webinar about if it's the right thing for the dog as well. And I think that reflects, it needs to be a dog-centric piece of work as well, not just that people want them, people want to rescue them, so they must come. That making sure it is the right thing for the animals got to be central as well, which the right rescues will, you know, the good rescues will be doing all that work and pairing the right dogs up with the right homes.
I just add as well, from a Battersea perspective, a couple of years ago we set up something called the Battersea Academy, and one arm of that is providing free training and advice, essentially using our experience of looking after animals for 160 years, providing training and advice for rescues based in other countries across the world, and helping them if they are looking for it, to care for animals and run shelter metrics and things in a sort of in a better way. And so I'm a terrible job of selling this here, but suffice to say, we're finding there is a huge appetite across the world for there's a lot of interest in trying to raise standards of rescue in country and trying to do more rehoming in country, which is clearly going to be better for the dog than bringing it across the world if it's unnecessary. However, there's a lot of countries where a significant rehoming market in country is a long way away yet.
Excellent. Okay, does anybody else want to comment, or we can move on? Okay, I just want to draw your attention as well to, in the chat, Lisa has written, I don't know if everybody's been able to see, if anyone has any suggestions for me to raise debates in Parliament in terms of research they're doing on dog welfare, etc., or questions that need to be raised to the Minister, you can email her, and her email is here. And I will just pop it down in the bottom of the chat again so everybody can see. 1 second. There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. If people can get in touch. I mean, I was wondering if it's something, perhaps an adjournment debate on support for animal welfare charities might be something that we could take forward as well. I was quite surprised that there hasn't been any support. I don't think the public are aware of that. I don't think they'd be very happy with that, to be honest, given the massive impact you know, that's going to have.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of PQs asked by different members on this, and the responses that come back are traditionally pretty generic from government.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's something the public really aren't aware of. I think they would have assumed that would, in the charities funding, that animal welfare charities would be included. So I think public would be quite shocked by that, to be honest.
I think there's often a misconception that there's perhaps more government support than there is for some of these services. I think with PDSA being aligned to means tested benefit, so I think we're just sometimes seen as almost like an NHS for pets, and that's just not the case. And I know other organisations, all of us have just taken such an incredible hit this year financially, with demand going through the roof, and our capacity to help because of things like social distancing being impacted as well. So it's a bit of a sort of triumvirate of issues on all of the charities at the moment, and as many other speakers have said, we don't know what's coming down the track to us. I think there was a comment in the chat just saying if rescues aren't at capacity at the moment, are we in sort of fear of perhaps crying wolf a little bit with some of these problems? But I think it's our responsibility to look at the sort of findings and the evidence that we have and flag to government that there are issues coming, and even if we might not be sort of having our feet to the fire right at the moment, there definitely are going to be problems as a result of all the issues that have been laid out tonight, and Mike's report does a really good job of kind of setting those out, and we've used those as a basis for several briefings, haven't we, Mike, to sort of for inquiries and others. It's just been so variable from different devolved governments and central governments as to the support and the sort of willingness to listen, I think, to some of those experienced voices talking about the issues and how it may impact down the line.
Thank you. No, I think
Can I
that's
bring up
take forward. Carry on.
Sorry.
Sorry. Carry on, Belinda.
No, I just wanted to bring up the issue of the census, because I know everybody tried really hard to get companion animals on this next census. Personally, I think it's we should definitely really try and get companion animal ownership onto the next one, because we don't really know exactly how many animals are out there.
Okay.
Yeah, there were significant efforts to do that for the 2021, but there just absolutely wasn't capacity, unfortunately.
Okay. So that's a longer term issue that we can take forward, but would be really important. And it sounds like the charities one might be a potential one for a debate. And support for animal welfare charities. I mean, of course, I would love to prioritise dogs in that, but I'll have to be generic. I'll get into trouble from the cat people again.
One thing I'd just like to add is that we talk about puppies all the time. We're not talking enough about what's happening to their parents. And I think it's because we talk about puppies so much, the public forget, or they just don't seem to be top of mind. What's happening to these breeding dogs, the puppy farms, they're licensed. These are not illegal, but the welfare situation is very, much as if they were illegal. So I think there's another aspect to this whole puppy issue, because, well, everyone wants to talk about puppies, but how many people want to talk about breeding dogs?
There was a really interesting question about human behaviour change that might help sort of answer, how can we help on some of these issues? I don't know if that's worth looking at, Tiffany. Do you want me to read it out, or sorry? And there's so many questions now. It's such a good panel.
There are, yeah, there's 67 there.
Yeah,
some of them are long, so it takes a bit to read through. I think you're referring to
Kay Nightingale.
Yeah, feel free. Go ahead.
Well, the question was, what are the panelists' thoughts about how we can attempt to change people's behaviour to encourage people to wait for a quality puppy rather than expecting instant supply? Because unless we change behaviour, nothing will change. And I think human behaviour change underpins so much of what we need to do as a sort of collaborative, in our collaborative efforts. And if people aren't aware of HBCA, Human Behaviour Change for Animals, they're a fantastic organisation taking some of those human behaviour change principles that we'll all be sick to death of after the 3-line slogans and things from this pandemic, but there are some really good theories and principles behind it, and they take that and apply that to animal welfare issues. And in those principles, we asked people at PDSA how might they like to have got information pre-purchase, pre-acquisition, pre-rescue, and they a lot of them said a face-to-face conversation would have been good, and lots of them still said the veterinary team would be a really useful place to be able to go. So a conversation with a veterinary professional. So one of the things that we trialed was pre-purchase consultations. So before you get your pet, come and talk to a vet or a vet nurse and actually have a chat through your sort of situation. So we use the acronym PLACE, exercise, time and spend, a PETS acronym, to just chat through, right, what's your situation and are you best suited for a pet? If so, which? Trying to talk people down from perhaps the higher energy breed of dog and things like that. And then we look at the 5 welfare needs of that dog, and then the specifics of that breed, and it gives an opportunity to talk about everything from brachycephalic dog health right the way through to what exercise you can provide, dietary choices, all the different problems that we're seeing, and we provided some e-learning and some practice packs that could be personalized to whatever vet it was. They weren't PDSA branded, and we've worked quite hard over the last 5 years to really push those in the veterinary profession to say, look, open your doors up, do free consults, do online chats, do live Facebooks, chat to people about this, and really put that veterinary voice at the center of the sort of for our instance puppy purchasing decision, because if you're good, you'll gain a client for life. If you love your vet, you don't go anywhere else if you trust that relationship, and also you'll stop seeing some of these heartbreaking things that can be so preventable if the right dogs are in the right homes. We've had some really good responses. Obviously, at the moment with COVID, really difficult, but I think there's a huge opportunity for online engagement, to offer online consultations or reach out in different ways to people who might be making this choice. And perhaps that's something anyone with a big platform, Pets for Homes, whatever, could consider advising in terms of that. If we go back to these human behaviour change principles, how do we break through the emotion, and how do we have those honest conversations with people to try and flag some of these preventable problems?
Excellent, thank you very much. I have, potentially an interesting question that you all might want to comment on. So nearly every speaker has mentioned the benefit of dogs on human health. They say, potentially the majority or some of the people in this call probably aren't aware of this. However, thanks to the media, relationship with and portrayal of puppies and dogs during COVID-19, what are the speakers' thoughts on a potential glamorization of dogs as medication? And what do you predict, do you predict a kickback in years to come?
Well, I did actually mention in my presentation about how they were almost being treated like Prozac, but it was very much a one-way street. So I think there is a bit of a glamorization about it. The thing is that the companion animals and our health is not a new thing. It's been scientifically proven for years that they reduce blood pressure, they help depression, they help loneliness. But again, I worry now that in the situation where extraordinary situation of lockdowns occurring, and it's not really going to change anytime soon, that people will see this as an easy out for helping them get past this. And that's not the reason to get a companion animal now, is it? I mean, that's a selfish reason to do it. But yeah, I think it is. I think there is a glamorization generally of puppies, and the word cute should be just eradicated from the human vocabulary, because we talk about cute puppies, we don't talk about cute dogs. That's just my view.
Just make a quick point on some other research that we've been carrying out on the impact of owning an animal with health conditions, and I think absolutely great point around trying to increase awareness that, as you just said, Linda, having a cute puppy is only a moment in time, and actually understanding the lifelong, it's horrible to use the word burden, but the potential caregiver burden of looking after an animal who has a lifelong condition. And we know in the UK that we do have a pretty heavy disease burden in our dogs, in our pedigree and to an extent our crossbreed dogs. So I completely agree that although, I'm a huge dog lover and huge dog advocate, at the same time putting out a more balanced message that it's a big responsibility, and you never know what's going to come. Even if you make all the right moves in the purchase of a puppy, you could still be in a very unfortunate situation and owning an animal that needs more care, both in terms of physical husbandry and also financial care, than you might be prepared for. So it's difficult. It is one of those horrible messages to try and get across, that we want people to love their dogs, but we want to promote dogs to an extent, but with also that caveat that it can be extremely difficult for you and your dog if things don't go as well as you might have hoped.
Could I say, I think this is more of a personal view. It's quite interesting how different media channels portray dog owning, actually, though. Just when we think about the glamorization of pets, I think we often see on Instagram and Facebook probably more, just with all the memes and all the general, whereas actually probably the traditional press, as Linda, you showed in all your headlines, has probably been far more downbeat around dog ownership over this time. Been very few sort of good news stories about dog ownership I've seen in the national press. You see it all on social media. So no actual point of view, just a comment actually about how those different channels actually do different things, actually, or have done.
Can I just add, we see a huge amount of caregiver burden. I think there's, you talk about all the positives, and I really, really rate all the positives, but our research in our community outreach is that there's a huge amount of the dark side of animal ownership. And it's stopping people getting the medical care that they need. There's a lot of issues out there, and I think it's a very to raise the 13% that are stressed, I think that's probably a huge underestimation from our experience.
Hey, anybody else got any comments on that question?
Just to make one little point that
Sure.
thank you. That I'd agree that the glamorization is a risk, and to be honest, we see consequences of that in rescue centres across the country all the time. When people have got tired or fed up or decided that the dog is different, one thing that really drives me up the pole is if I walk from one end of our intake counts to the other, I will spot at least 2 dogs at any given moment that are there because the owner has said, "Oh, it got really big. Did you get it as a puppy? Yeah. Well, what did you think was going to happen? It's a dog, they grow." And it's very frustrating when people get this sense of buyer's remorse that could have been avoided by them not taking the dog in the first place. And I think at the moment there is a great fear that not too many people are doing the stop, count to 10 and think, do I actually want to look after this dog for the rest of its life?
Excellent point. Cheers, Mike. I think we're going to have to start wrapping it up, although we could obviously talk for hours and hours, probably days and weeks, about some of these issues, or indeed all of these issues. Lisa, did you want to say some final words?
Thank you to everybody. It's been an amazing evening. It's been fantastic to hear about the research, the work that's ongoing. Very interesting to hear about the difficulties that we might be facing as lockdown persists and that have occurred during lockdown. I think, you know, we are quite an amazing APPG. 2.5 hours later, we're still at 190 participants, which is fantastic. Most APPGs don't have anything like that even at the start of their meeting. So well done, everybody. It does show that the UK is definitely a nation of dog lovers. So thank you to everyone for participating. And over to Mark, because we've got some exciting meetings coming up that I'm sure Mark will want to let you know about.
Thanks, Lisa. And as always, thank you for your chairing of this group. Done brilliantly. Peter Egan, are you still there? Do you want to say a few words? Or has he gone to sleep? He's gone. Okay. Is he there? Yeah. Peter, are you there? He's gone. Anyway, thanks to Peter Egan for staying for at least some of the tonight's event. I would like to say thank you to everyone, obviously, for attending, for sharing your time, for choosing to spend your evening with us, with APDAWG once again. I think it's been a successful meeting. I want to obviously personally thank Belinda, Helen, Rowena, Lee, Vicky, Mike, Linda for all their presentations and for working really hard to keep it down to 10 minutes. Really, really difficult. Also, thanks to Tiffany for sort of masterminding the techie side and for just being the glue really to hold everything together, again, brilliantly. And she's from the UK Centre for Animal Law, or ALAW. Obviously, thanks to Our Dogs as well, who are kind of media partners. The next meeting is on February the 23rd, which is another Tuesday. And as I said earlier, it's going to be on brachycephalic health and welfare, which is the welfare problems of flat-faced dogs. Can we ever solve them? The speakers are phenomenal, like they are tonight. And there's also some exciting things, as Lisa sort of hinted at, which will be revealed shortly in the next APDAWG newsletter or the one afterwards. So obviously, most of you probably subscribe anyway, but apdawg.co.uk, subscribe, it's free. There's a newsletter every month that I write. It takes ages, but it's worth it. There's so much information and there's so much going on in the world with regard to dog welfare. Also on that newsletter, importantly, there's all the petitions that are currently live. Please sign, please share, because that's how stuff gets debated and talked about in Parliament, and that's how conversations happen around these important topics. Follow us on Twitter if you don't already. That's APDAWG1, APDAWG1. And if you've got questions to anyone, and this has been made clear by every single speaker so far, speak about it, talk to people, email someone. Don't go online and just put your views and comments, because there's a lot of blaming and there's a lot of finger pointing, but there's, you know, contact that organization. And everyone that's spoken tonight has given their email address or made it completely apparent that they are receptive to comments and suggestions to improve what they do. So take advantage of that and keep the conversation polite and respectful always. We all love dogs, and there are many ways, as you've heard tonight, of protecting them and of guaranteeing their health and happiness now and well into the future. So thanks on behalf of APDAWG, on behalf of Lisa, on behalf of everyone who loves dogs, for another great evening. And good night. Sorry we kept you an extra 37 minutes. And stay safe, and we'll see you on the 23rd of February. Tonight was 500 capacity. We reached it in a few days. So when you see the next event advertised, please register immediately, because they are popular, which is fantastic. But we want everyone to be involved as much as possible. So thanks again, everybody. And as I say, stay safe, and we'll see you next month for more dog health and welfare chat. And yeah, look after yourselves. Cheers.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.
Well, thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.